Okay, good morning. Today is Thursday, November 7th, 2000.
Since I'm-
Absolutely, go ahead, Mr. Green.
As I represent the town and the Lee County Metropolitan Planning Organization, there was a recent presentation about the birth.
Just head back there. Just head back there. Yeah. So for those who aren't here, I'm 6'1". For those that are here, I've just answered your first question. How tall is she? Right?
Well, it's better than having to lay down in the front like the rest of us.
It is better. It is better. Yes. So I am founder of Friends of Burt, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Rail to Trail project that actually what I get excited about too, and I think you will be, is how those efforts from Fort Myers Beach to Bonita Beach come together, and I've got some maps to show you about that. So it really becomes exciting when you think about not only Burt, but I get most excited about that, of course, but what we can do in Lee County to really have a system of trails that would not only give us the beautiful beaches that we have, but also a system of trails that could be another reason that tourists come, another reason that we transform the economy. So Friends of Burt is a 501c3. We're all volunteer. I lead a board that is very active. We in Lee County have 26 HOAs that have endorsed us. We're at 3,500 members. We have a big, somebody was talking about a bike ride. We have a big bike ride coming up out of Estero on the November 17th, the Ride for Burt. So that's a big fundraiser for us. So what do we do? And I'll just go through this quickly. Bike ped safety, we need that in Lee County. We're probably the worst county in Florida, which is the worst state in the United States for bike ped safety. And so that's number one for us. I'm a cyclist, but I don't tend to go out on the roads very much anymore because it's dangerous. And so having these types of things that you guys are working on along Estero Road and then what we're working on are really going to help that. I'm going to show a quick video that kind of gives you an opportunity to envision what we're talking about. For most of you, it doesn't take a lot. For most people, it does take a lot to understand how transformational that a beautiful linear park and trail. Anybody else see those around the country? You bet. You bet. I'm originally from the West Coast, then to North Carolina, and then we vacation in the summer in Michigan. We don't have to go on the road at all in all of those places in order to walk, etc. So, and my friend Natalie White, whom you may know already as an architect, is helping us to understand how to help people visualize what this will be. But right now, I'm just going to show this quick video. Let's see if I am, okay, can I click on that image? Will that allow me to click?
Looks like it.
Looks like it's going.
Oh, it's going.
I have to do it manually.
Okay, perfect. And then, all right, we need sound also. This guy, okay, I'll act it out. How about that? He's telling you what this is really going to be like. What I can tell you is that rail to trails are incredibly important in that in a rail to trail project you don't have a lot of driveways, you don't have those types of entries, and so it ends up being safer and more transformational.
Is going to provide so much more safety.
Safer and more transformational.
Is going to provide so much more safety.
You guys want to see it? You want to see the video?
Yes,
With sound?
Guys, this is miles
Here
of
we go.
century-old railroad running from Alico Road down past Bonita Beach Road, like so much of the country is doing, is turning abandoned railroads into linear parks.
The park and just be safe.
Think of it as a 15-mile long park that doubles as a 15-mile long highway made for only foot and bike traffic. The state will rip up the rails, clean up the whole 130-foot wide area, put down an asphalt trail, and then the private sector and the communities along the path will get involved to beautify it for years to come. So what we have is kind of like a 15-mile wide sling. Would you like to look at it that way?
I like to look at it that way. That is a fantastic way to look at it.
A business takes ownership of it, or a sole
Yeah.
individual.
You'll be able to travel the trail to downtowns, the mall, parks, schools, neighborhoods, different communities.
Here's Coconut Point Mall. On the other side of these trees is the rail line. There's already plans to build an access point so that people can use the trail to get there. 70,000 residents will be able to have a 10-minute walk to this new trail. Within a mile of trail, you can expect your homes to be worth at least 7, maybe more like 20% more.
Could you imagine? And put their name on it? This butterfly garden by so-and-so coffee shop.
A little garden.
Supporters are saying things like, we'd like to build a park, we'd like to build an access point.
Bringing this here is going to provide so much more safety.
There are 11 schools, 10,000 students that will be within a mile, able to safely get to school. We won't have visitors that only come for the beaches, they'll come for this as well.
Repeatedly across the nation, results of similar rail trail reconstruction initiatives have been astounding. Residents are already contemplating ways to enhance their segment, to enhance the appeal of their localities. They're putting forth ideas for gardens, amenities, architectural elements, bridges, landscapes, small parks, access points, and a whole bunch of other imaginative projects. Could you imagine how many people are going to be on this in a day?
Oh my gosh.
It's going to be crazy.
I hope someone's there with a little.
All right, see, wasn't that worth it?
It was.
Let's see, now I want to click to the next slide, which isn't happening. Could I click to the next slide? All right, so you heard a lot in the video. I'll just pull a few things out. It's 14.9 miles long, so now you have 4 jurisdictions that are part of this rail to trail. So it starts in Collier County, goes into Bonita Springs, then Estero, and then in unincorporated Lee County. So you've got a lot of people to coordinate with. All are excited about it, as well as the state of Florida is very excited about it as well. It's under contract, hasn't been purchased yet. So it's $81.6 million to purchase that. So we are putting together a lot of different types of funding in order to do that, in order to procure that, and that is due by, the contract says March of 2026. So that contract is with Seminole Gulf Rail Line, with a subcontract, I understand, with CSX, who originally owned it. And so that's what it has been appraised at. So a lot of different sources. There's the 2 cities have already pledged $5 million per. We're working with state funding. We should be part of. Have you heard of Sun Trails? I know they're the ones building the building it from Bonita Beach. I'm sorry, from Fort Myers Beach on is the dollars at the state level within FDOT for Sun Trails. County funding and state appropriations, and then we've already applied for an ATIP grant. The RAISE grant is coming up, and other grants. So that's kind of the funding sources. Some other interesting funding sources, even in the last week, have come forward. You already know the health benefits and the people that are so close. I get excited about a few other things, the 11 schools that are within a mile. I think about right outside of I've got 2 schools right outside of our entrance that the line is so long of the people trying to drop their kids off. I'd love to be able to help them with a way to get there on a bike or walk. So economic benefits, we've already conducted studies around the potential economic benefits, et cetera, and storm resiliency. So there's a lot of benefits to a rail to trail project like this. It's part of the Florida Gulf Coast Trail. And somebody talked about Charles Hines that they were working. Was that you, John? Said
We had worked with him in the past, or
Yeah.
at least
He was commissioner in Sarasota
Trying
County, and now
to,
he's with Trust
with
for
the
Public Land.
Trust for Public Lands.
Yeah, so he is in charge of pulling together what we call the Florida Gulf Coast Trail, for which you guys will be part of it, and Bert would be part of that.
Is that what this is, that goes up to like Tarpon Springs? 'Cause I've been up there and saw the same type of trail that goes all the way up into Tarpon
Sure,
Springs, is that the
sure,
same?
yes, yeah, yes. Yeah, and so Charles Hines was county commissioner with Sarasota County when the Legacy Trail was put in. And so that's from Sarasota to Venice, and then they've got some more, going with Northport, et cetera. So that's been transformational for Sarasota County. This is a map, if you will, of, here you are, Fort Myers Beach, here's the Burt segment, and when you look at, does this have a light on it? Ah, it does.
It doesn't show up.
Oh, but it doesn't show on that. So you'll see that where
It's
the
just for
arrows
entertaining
are.
cats.
So you'll see where the arrows are with Fort Myers Beach and Burt. But my husband and I were putting this map together, we thought it was pretty cool to think about, should we be able to, and I always kind of say in my lifetime, if we're able to get all this done, there's a 38-mile loop that would be Burt up to John Yarborough, across, and then over to Fort Myers Beach and down. That's a 38-mile loop. Wouldn't that just be amazing? And the way that we could, just like Pinellas Trail, just like others in the state, Winter Gardens and that, really create something very special.
Are you gonna touch on the, love what I'm hearing, by the
Yeah.
way, but are you gonna touch on, the Lee County just appropriated some money to get folks on bikes from the south tip of Fort Myers Beach to the beginning of Burt Trail. Do you have any information on that this morning? We've not been really briefed by the county. It's great news.
Yeah.
But obviously, we're building a new bridge on the south end of our island that's gonna have incredible sidewalks to allow bikes to get over the bridge in a much more convenient way. And then from there on in, the county's appropriated funds for trails. Do you know much about that piece of the
I
puzzle?
read about it probably in the public domain. I did call the MPO to get more information, and they said, well, what you have from Naples Daily News is what they have. It's state dollars that will put in a 12-foot protected bike lane. I call it a bike lane. I should call it a multi-use path because it's not just bikes, right? But and it would be protected, and it would be separated from traffic, and it would go from each time they put in or improve a bridge along that route, they will add that 12-foot multi-use trail. But because they own the land already, or either the state or the county already owns the land, the state is putting in the 12-foot multi-use path between Fort Myers Beach and Bonita Beach. It'll take a while to get to Burt because there's the land acquisition will be difficult, but each time they do a bridge, like Hickory and those bridges, they'll be able to add that to it. Does that answer your question?
That's very helpful, thank you.
Okay, yeah, and so that's a question even at the MPO level, but I called Ron Gagoy and got that. So, so that's kind of exciting. You know, when you're running a 501c3, and this is what I do all day, every day, as a retired volunteer, I get excited about this stuff. It's like, that's another win, that's another win. So what happens next is really we have to complete the purchase in 2026, and as part of the purchase funding, there will be funding for PD&E as part of that purchase price, so that can start right away and then get into trail design and construction. And this is specific to Burt, because we have to get the right-of-way. We have to own the right-of-way. In other places, we don't have that step. So that's my dog and pony, and I wanted to be able to reach out and say, we've got a big organization, we have lots of volunteers, how can we work together, and what questions do you have?
John?
What do you want from us?
What I would like you to consider and is we've had different cities endorse the idea, endorse the project. And so the city of Fort Myers earlier this year invited me in to give a presentation, and then they voted to endorse. I know this is not, you're not voting today, but that would be what I would like to see, and that just helps us with our, it has really helped us, especially with the state funding.
Just curious, the start of the Burt Trail, that's on Bonita Beach Road, is that correct? Is it,
It's actually south of that. It's actually Wiggins in Collier County, so it goes 1.5 miles into Collier County. It connects with Veterans Parkway, and then we'll go further south because the project that's on, that's away from, it's along Livingston. It'll go right into Naples, and so it'll very quickly give us,
it'll be part of that trail along Livingston or connected to it?
yeah, when they have a new trail.
Okay,
On Livingston. Yes, it will be. Yeah,
Great.
Veterans Parkway. So for Collier County, it's important for them to get that because they want to be able to build Veterans Parkway to 41. Veterans Parkway is a beautiful parkway. There's a huge high school there, and so this would connect to the trails that are along Veterans Parkway and then to Livingston and down into Naples.
so where it crosses Bonita Beach Road, where is that?
It is, it's near Spanish Wells.
Okay,
Right, you remember when you go across the rail line?
Yep,
Yeah, it'll
gotcha.
cross Bonita Beach Road, yes.
all right, thank you.
It crosses Bonita Beach Road though, and then
Yeah,
goes to
before-
Old 41, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, of course.
Counselor Woodson?
Well, having spent 37 winters of my discontent in Minnesota,
The state with the
most bike
Of
everywhere.
any in
Yeah, it's throughout the
country.
state, and we lived in Minneapolis, Twin Cities, and you had bike trails that went all the way through, connecting Minneapolis, St. Paul, downtown. I mean, it was fabulous. So I cannot believe that Florida is the last in line to do this, but I just think it would be fantastic. I would endorse it in a minute.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah.
I think that what's occurred, I sit on a state board as well for, because I just wasn't busy enough that, for Florida Greenways and Trails Foundation. And they really got this thing going with Senator Pasadomo. So we're really fortunate that she is helping us down here. I think that what she's also supporting, which is fantastic, is something called Collier to Polk. So just think, you come out here, you get on Burt, and then you get to connect to another 200-mile Collier to Polk that's going to happen fast. Somehow, when you've got the past president of the Senate and the next president of the Senate that are trails enthusiasts, it's so exciting to see what they're able to do by using what's called the Sun Trails dollars and other projects that the Senate has put in place along with the governor for trails. So they're finishing trails in North Florida. The Coast to Coast Trail, they're finishing that. Some of those dollars will begin to flow down here. Thanks, Karen.
Counselor Safford?
You know, I grew up in Wisconsin, and we were doing this 40 years ago. Turning old railroad lines into bike paths, and I fully support you guys and whatever we can do to help you.
Yeah, I agree. I encourage supporting this 100%. It's, the faster Southwest Florida is growing, the less land is going to become available to do it, as we're seeing now. And we're in a position, I think, unfortunately, that we're in the position that we have ability to be able to try to accumulate some right-of-ways or some land to be able to make this a reality. So you'd have my endorsement 100%.
Thanks, Dan.
I think we can do we need a letter from us, or what would you need from us to be, will we have
That
to
would
go
be ideal.
do a vote or
Yeah.
just give direction, or will we need a resolution?
I think some direction, and then we can bring it back on Monday or on the 18th if you want it. Do you have a deadline?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just put it in your packet and you can approve it.
Okay, yeah, so if
I
you.
should have said yes, I should
Yeah.
have said
Yeah.
yes. Well, I think all of that helps us,
But
and-
just to be clear, what's,
Yeah.
what's most helpful to you? Is it the letter or a resolution? What's most helpful to your cause?
Or both.
I would recommend a resolution, because it's a much more formalized,
That's what
document.
that's what the city of Fort Myers did, yes, it was a resolution. And, truthfully, I think that, because of what you guys have had to work through, it means a lot to me that you all understand this, and anything that you could do to influence our county commissioners as well, to maybe more vocally get on board. I think each one of them that I talked to are like, yay, but we need them to participate as one of the 4 jurisdictions, and that's what's been difficult for us. And I think rightfully so, because they've been busy with storms. I mean, just one storm after another, and that ability to really focus on something different than the storms has been difficult. But it has been tough for us to get their consensus.
Well, I think we can help with that. I don't know if we can move the needle a lot, but we certainly can. I think the more support you get from the municipalities, the more it lets them know that we're all in this together.
Yes, thank you.
Mayor, may I make a confession and a disclosure?
Oh,
Here comes the
I
conflict.
actually live very close to the Coast to Coast in Claremont. And some of our other clients, because we represent a number of cities, they have all entered into a program called the Trail Town. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's another huge benefit to a local government that does have a trail that goes through it. Not only do you have your residential uses for schools, as she's pointed out, but the restaurants, the overnight accommodations, but then there's the marketing component as being designated as a trail town. So that's about my extent of knowledge of it, but I don't know if you wanted to elaborate.
Well informed about the Trail Town program the state of Florida has with the Visitors Bureau. And so,
is that the one that allows you to get an accredited thing saying that you are a bike-friendly community? I was reading about that
but
last
it's
year.
also here, but wait, there's more, Dan. I'm sorry,
I can't
Mayor.
wait. Yeah,
Mayor,
no, Dan works perfect.
Sorry. What Nancy's talking about is really something we probably don't see inside of Florida, but it's all the marketing that goes to Germany, that goes to everywhere in the world, that's saying Southwest Florida is the place to be. So if you lived in Dunedin, you lived in Winter Park, lived in Claremont, lived in these other places, there are right now 11 Florida trail towns. And you get a tremendous amount of marketing that comes from the state. And in fact, at the last state legislative session, they actually earmarked even more dollars for Trail Town marketing. So it's a pretty remarkable thing. Fort Myers Beach would be in a perfect situation for that. Bonita Springs is like, they could do it now because of the water, because the Blue Ways, they could do it now, but with that, they will. Estero, there's no competition here. It's a cooperation, and I think you saw it up on the Coast to Coast, is you could have a number of trail towns that are designated trail towns. I'm gonna go to something in February to designate Venice, Florida as a trail town. That'll be the next one. So thank you for bringing that up.
Mr. Mayor, we are working towards that end goal right now with the R2P2 project, and with one of a proponent developer in the town to connecting the south town the south side of town, where we do have the bike lanes accessible on Estero Boulevard. When you get up to Mid-Island, it chokes down, and because of the bus lanes and whatnot. So we've developed a possible path down Shell Mound and through the back part of town to connect over to here, at least to get you to the hotel district and the downtown district. It doesn't really show much now because of the construction going on by the bridge, but we're in the process of developing these plans along with our partners at FEMA and the federal government that came through after Ian. So that's already in the process of being developed and could show some good results in the possibly 2 years. So that would get you to that accreditation.
Have you seen that, I think it was a 2017 MPO study that was done, just specifically for Fort Myers Beach?
No,
That lays out the plans that,
before I lived
it lays out the plans of what a future path would look like
here. Okay,
through, so a lot of work has already been done, and I know it's relatively, the staff can get it to you, I'm sure
Yep.
they have it, but it shows a lot of ideas as to what Frankie was talking about, on how to get around some of these right-of-way issues, to be able to put a path through Fort Myers Beach, so if it's beneficial
yeah.
to you in any way.
Oh, I'd love to, anything I can do, any way I can help, I'm happy to do that.
We'll get that information to you
Thank
then.
you,
Yes.
thank you.
All right,
Natalie, did you
Write it
wanna
down.
add anything?
Don't forget.
hello again.
Hey, I'll have to move this down. Natalie White with Shinkle Schultz Architecture. I'm the associate principal, and I lead our Southwest Florida office. I have seen you guys in another capacity. I have been working with Deb on BERT. I heard about the project. I'm a resident of Bonita Springs, so it's a very interesting project. But to us, the way we talk about it, it's called BERT, from Bonita to Estero, and connects. It's the missing link that connects Fort Myers to Collier. It really is a Southwest Florida project, because we really do have the opportunity, if it's done right, to make this a destination like a lot of cities. So one of the big examples is the High Line in New York City, which is a very urban setting. They took a trail and it went right through the city, and it really just changed that entire linear. I mean, everything that was touching that trail, like all the buildings had to really adjust to the new trail, because that was the new highway. So the opportunity in this portion of the trail is very different from other parts of Southwest Florida, because it intersects so many downtown areas. We're crossing the Estero River, we're crossing the Imperial River downtown Fort Myers, right in Old 41. So there's just so much opportunity. It's not just a bike trail. So when it hits these nodes, I call them, in the downtown, we have an opportunity to make, really rethink everything that's around it, right? So these buildings, these developers, a lot of the spaces, a lot of the lots that are on these trails are now becoming important lots, right? Because you'll have the facade, you'll have the entry from the road, but now you have to really think about how are you entering from the linear trail. So Atlanta has the green belt, which is also very similar. It's a little bit more like what we're trying to do. New York is too urban, right? It's a city, where you could ride your bike from brewery to brewery, right? So you can be downtown Bonita Springs, and the crossings on this trail, if you really look at it, it's pretty incredible. You have Coconut Point, you have Hertz, the headquarters, you have Lee County, Lee Health there. It takes you downtown. So there's just so much opportunity, and if we do it right, it could become a destination like some of these big trails that you hear about around the country. And that's what we really want to bring, right? People to Southwest Florida, also the impact for residents and how, what Deb was saying. So that's what gets me excited as an architect about the opportunity that we can make it more than just a paved concrete that connects. So there are parts where it does hit residential, where we have to consider safety and privacy. And so it'll change along the trail. But the biggest thing is just thinking about it as a Southwest Florida trail. So that's really all I have to add.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, you definitely have our support, so
Thank you.
let us know how we can help in the
All right,
future.
and
I'll
thanks,
do the
Nancy.
resolution.
Okay, thanks so
Okay.
much.
Great
Thank you.
job, thank you,
Thanks for
Joe.
coming.
Thank you.
Next is our discussion on public benefits. This is a summary of the LPA discussion of public benefits. Who's gonna start us out? You look hesitant.
Well, it really wasn't my item. However, I think
John's
that
here,
what staff wanted to walk away with was to convey the message from the local planning agency that they do want to have a joint meeting with the town council to discuss this concept. The information that is in your packet is basically a summary that Judith put together. I think it's pretty comprehensive of what was discussed recently at the local planning agency, and again, to further develop it. I believe the next item on the agenda is about regarding the procedural rules for these development agreements as we start to, as more projects are coming up for review. The idea there that that we would have some type of reference to special benefits or public benefits. The LPA did draw a distinction between those and tried to set up some guidelines of how to achieve that. There is some prior information from staff when this item first came before you that shows what some of the other municipalities have done. And I think, Jason, did you want to elaborate further on that? I think that that's pretty much what I know about this issue.
Yeah, so the packet is fairly comprehensive. I think staff. So staff just wants to reiterate that what LPA had suggested, which is that they would like to have that discussion together. I think the rubric that was brought up in LPA, while perhaps not fully comprehensive and fully fleshed out yet, is a good starting point for the discussion. Really, LPA just kind of was looking for a way to get an idea of how town council will interpret the weight and value of these things, fully knowing that coming up with some sort of, set in stone point system is difficult and perhaps not the way to go. But they really just wanted to jumpstart this idea of what the priorities are and see those impacted in the public benefits that are offered.
Okay. Vice Mayor, hit.
Just a couple thoughts. Number one, I want to thank the LPA. It was a great discussion. I watched the whole thing, and I want to thank in particular Jim Dunlap and Jim Bone. I thought it was a great beginning. Obviously, the council's talked about this at length. I agree that the formulaic dynamic of this is potentially problematic, but I think it's an excellent idea for us to at least make public our priorities in terms of public benefit to potential developers, so they have a sense of what we're looking for in a more formal format. I had read through the documents, and if I missed it in here somewhere, I apologize, but I don't think I did. I just want to add a few things, Jason. I don't know if Judith is here, but if we could just add a couple categories for discussion when we meet jointly, which I hope we do, that I did not see in the documents. I think we need to have a category, and again, this is challenging, and we saw this at one of our earlier developments. We had this discussion, and it's challenging as to how you do it. But if a developer was to come forth boldly and lead with one of these things, I think it could be helpful. One of the categories that I would like to add is essential services. And this gets back to the concept of facilitating some sort of an entity that could provide script writing capabilities, whether it be a doc, whether it be a physical a nurse practitioner, any sort of a dynamic where we could have emergency care type facility, so we could just have some kind of basic medical services here on the island. I think that would be a tremendous public benefit. And I would also throw dentist in there as well as physical therapist. I think those are all entities on this that we had on the island and were extremely beneficial, and just in terms of basic blocking and tackling quality of life dynamics. And again, how that's done is something we'll talk, I think, better to discuss jointly with the LPA. But I just want to make sure those are added. Then there's sort of the semi-essential services, for lack of a better term. There's a place where you can get your hair cut, a bank, florist, a vet maybe, or something that, again, these are things that would be great. And some of this is geographical. For example, a hotel. There are no hotels on the south end of the island. And people would say, well, there's lots on the north end. Well, that's great, and I love our north end hotels, but during season, people on the south end can't get to the north end. And we need a hotel on the south end. There's a lot of folks with 2-bedroom condos who, friends and family come to town on short notice, and they need a hotel that you don't have to drive off island to get or contribute to the traffic challenges of going north. And that's an issue as well. And I think, too, and some of this is geographic in nature. We talk about restrooms on the beach. We talk about a drinking fountain. Again, more challenges on the south end, which is quite barren right now. And I think one other category I'd like to add is early entrance. I think those folks, those developers who take risks and are the first to come to the island and present a plan that encompasses many of these public benefits that the LPA talked about and that which I just talked about, I think there's value to that. And I think, again, obviously the first medical office is a lot more important than the seventh medical office, and the first dentist is a lot more important than the fourth dentist. And I think that's holds true for restaurants as well, and other type of essential and non-essential services. So, again, a Herculean task. I commend the LPA for trying to more formalize it, and I support those efforts, and I do look forward to a joint meeting. Thank you.
Counselor Safford, any thoughts?
Yeah, the one thing, and Jason and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago about if you do this formulaic, 2 points for this, 3 points for that, the challenge on our beach is that there has to be a delta based on location or future land use, and to come up with that delta that's fair to whether it's on the north end, south end, mid-island, on the beach, off the beach, that's gonna be our challenge. So I'm okay with the formulaic way to do it, awarding points for different things, but there has to be a delta in there, that multiplier, so to speak. And that's a challenge to figure out. But I applaud the LPA for getting the ball rolling, and I absolutely would love to have a joint meeting with them.
Counselor Woodson?
So there were also, excuse me, there were also a couple other things mentioned that I don't see on the list in that meeting. One was the economic benefit. I know, because I was in that meeting and Jim touched on that, Jim Dunlap, that there has to be economic benefit overall to the entire community for things. Transportation. What kind of benefit to either our transportation system, additional transportation systems for the island, and maybe additional transportation when you get here? What are the other opportunities, like the waterway taxis and that type of thing? And then one that I keep plugging away on all the time is our, monetary investment in our canal upkeep and waterways. That has been a huge miss for us as a community. We had no systematic way of keeping our canals dredged and that type of thing. As a result of it, after Ian, we missed FEMA dollars on that because we did not have a program into place. So I think that's something that has to be incorporated as we move forward. Just given, the whole, all of the storms that we're having and the sand that's coming in, and it just keeps raising the water heights, everything else. I mean, there's something that we have to focus on. So I would like to see those added as options.
Do you, as part of the waterways, do you also consider that encompassing the mooring field? Is that a priority as well?
I would think so.
I think it's all the water all the way around the
I
island.
think it's all
whether
the way
a
around.
canal,
Yep.
back bay, beach.
Yep, exactly.
We've got to, we got a part, if they want to play, then they need to partner with us to advocate clean water and clean up the canals and all that. They have to be good stewards.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Counselor King?
I'm not sure I have anything else to add to that, other than I look forward to the opportunity to work with the LPA on fleshing these out.
Yeah, I think, looking through all this and watching the discussion that the LPA had, I think you guys were right on track as far as breaking down the special benefit, public benefit. I think packet page 10 and 11 really summarizes what was discussed at the LPA. If you have a chance to go look through it, it kind of breaks it in. I've never been a fan of the point system. I think it's as Scott has said all along, a small development may not be able to provide what a larger development can. So in a point system, how does that put them at a disadvantage over, they may not be able to achieve any of those points they need to be able to get the building that they need to make it work for them and for the community. So that's why I've never been a big fan of the point system. For me, I like to keep things general I think it's good to have a base starting point. to me, a public benefit, I think, has been laid out perfectly on page 10, is what's a benefit and what's an amenity. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the town should look at, and I've talked with the town manager about this several times, when we're talking about ferries, does it make more sense for the town to operate it, but these developments potentially offer us places to have a drop-off, as opposed to them managing it, and they could pull it at any time, or, you know, so, something to look at down the road, but does it make more sense? Kind of like we talked about the wagon thing, does it make more sense for the town to operate the program? Somebody else operates it, but the town manages it all through funding that comes from tourist development dollars, or from parking, or from short-term, so it's paid for by the visitors versus being paid for by the residents. To me, that is a public benefit.
Or we could also maybe leverage something from the Lee County Metropolitan Planning
Same,
Organization.
yeah, exactly, something like that.
They've looked into it in the past, and
TDC.
But if the town could get into a position where we could, we're just talking about traffic specifically, and a water ferry that, you know, we can design it, we can set it up, and then you could have the participants as part of a public benefit being a drop-off location, does that make more sense? I don't know, it's a discussion we can have at the joint meeting, but, I kind of look at things, I like the tiered system kind of thing you talked about, I like it in concept. You know, I try to put everything in numbers because it seems to make more sense to me, and, you know, if you go to a bank, and a bank says your interest rate is 10% to do this project, but if you want to do this, this, and this, and this, and this add-on, you're now gonna be at 30%. Well, somewhere in the middle there, you gotta decide what makes financial sense, right? So how do we do that legally? And I've talked with the attorneys about this. How can we put something in place that what's important today may not be important tomorrow, or the next day, or 10 years from now, by the time these projects are developed? And to be able to have the flexibility to take that funding and move it to what is important at the time. As Karen said so rightfully so, canals are a big thing. How can we get seawalls built? That's an important thing. That's an important bucket that people could environmentally, all that stuff that they could be contributing to. You know, a base starting point that you guys talked about, view corridor is nice, but is a view corridor really a public benefit? Now, if you make it a beach access, now it truly becomes a beach access. So is that a starting point? So I think these are things that we're on the right path, and if anybody hasn't had a chance to look at what Jim and the LPA put together, I think you really should take a look at it, because I think it's a great starting point. I think with the joint meeting, we could really hammer down some things to give direction, but I don't think that we have to totally say, if you give us this, you get that. If you get this, you give it. It puts a disadvantage to your Delta point, Scott, that a small development doesn't have the same starting point that a big development could. And it has to have that same delta, if you will, that is a benefit to not just public now, but public 10, 20 years from now. So whenever we can get it scheduled, I'm on board with the joint meeting to.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with that. I'll coordinate with Andy as far as availability and times. The other thing that had been asked, you know, during the process, yes, we've had a project come through partially at this point. You know, what is the town really interested in? And one resource that is still a work in progress is your strategic plan, which kind of sets forth what direction you're going as far as your infrastructure and what's important to the town. Once, and Andy, you can comment on that, as far as once that's completed, that's another resource of what you could look to as possibly having a special benefit or a public benefit. That was just some feedback that I received.
When do you want to try to get this scheduled?
I think the sooner the better. I think, you know, you strike while the iron's hot, and I'll get with Amy, and we'll send out some dates to both groups today and see when we can get it done, and see if we can't get it set possibly even as early as next week, if possible. It's a short week because of Veterans Day, but we'll look at the calendar.
Everybody okay with that?
certainly.
All right.
Yep.
Anything else on this before we move on to the next item? No? Okay. We'll hash everything out in that meeting.
There you go.
I keep looking at you because you're the only LPA member here.
I speak for them all.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Do you want me to read this into record, or does it not need to be read? into
It
record?
doesn't.
Okay.
So if you like, Mayor, I can go ahead and introduce the item.
Please do.
Okay, so what you have in your packet is a resolution, and I will read the title. A resolution of the Town Council, Town of Fort Myers Beach, amending Resolution 24-73, containing the procedures for development agreements with deviations to clarify that these development agreements are home rule development agreements and to amend related notice provision, requirements for consistency with notice requirements in section 2-98 and chapter 34 of the town of Fort Myers Beach. So this item is in your packet today. I did mention it on Monday at your meeting, because we wanted to make sure you had enough time to look at it, and if there were any questions in that regard, this item will be on your agenda for October the 18th, November
November.
18th. The days are running together.
Month to-
Yes, for November 18th, and we wanted you to make sure that there was an understanding of what this does, what it doesn't do. Your code basically had some language in it that recognized you could have statutory development agreements as well as home rule development agreements. And then it gave a lot of information about statutory development agreements, but not so much about home rule development agreements. And you do have a little bit more flexibility with adoption of a home rule development agreement. Your code said that, the issues would basically be hashed out in an administrative rule, and moving very quickly after Ian to try to get redevelopment started and making the town more resilient to future storms. The resolution was adopted containing a administrative code. And after that, there were a lot of projects that were interested in pursuing this. However, none of them really did until quite recently. And today's hearing is not about Red Coconut or Seagate. I want to be clear on the record. It's really focused on your procedures and how you go about these things. So with that said, the resolution and the administrative code was drafted very quickly to try to provide a tool. We have gone through it in part. You don't have a final development agreement approved or denied. But as we went through the process with that one project, we noticed a few things that we wanted to clarify in the procedural rules, as well as make a couple of changes. So I just want to briefly highlight what the strike and inserts are, why they're there, and then again, no action is needed today because this will be on your November 18th, so you can think about it a little bit more. First off, the way that this thing has been described has been a development agreement with deviations. Yet the development agreement itself may not even have deviations in it. It's one item that could be in there. So we want to change the way that it's characterized and make it home rule development agreements. And so the first part of it is basically eliminating the word deviations and just keeping it as a home rule development agreement. So you see a lot of that throughout. And I do want to bring your attention to the sentence that reads in that introductory section, a approval of a home rule development agreement and the deviations provided for in such home rule development agreement shall be considered tantamount to and commensurate to a planned development for purposes of determining consistency with the comprehensive plan. What we found was that the notice requirements for a statutory development agreement is somewhat different from our notice requirements for a planned development approval. So we want to make it the same because of the fact that this is intended in some instances to be a substitute for your planned development approvals. And when we look at the notice provisions for a PD, it requires a notice to adjacent property owners within 375 feet. This version of it went ahead and said 500-foot radius, so we left that in. The other difference is that the statutory development agreement requires a minimum of 2 public hearings. The way that you process your PD approvals is it's actually 3 public hearings. It's a public hearing before the LPA for purposes of determining consistency and a recommendation. And then because we will be adopting these by ordinance, it requires 2 public hearings before you with the advertisement 10 days prior to the second public hearing, as you do for all your ordinances. So in a way, this is actually broadening the notice provisions related to it. And then I think the only other real change.
Nancy, just real quick, so are you in essence codifying what we've already been doing? Or are you
We
changing
are,
it?
yes, we're making it consistent.
Right, so in essence, what we're going through now will be sort of precedent
Yes.
for what we're gonna do in the future?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And
okay.
as we were going through what we're doing now, we discovered that there were these inconsistencies, and so we want to make it consistent.
Gotcha.
This would be retroactive to your decision back in April when you first adopted it. And, you know, future projects that came through, they would be coming through with the same notice and process that you do for a plan development approval.
Got it.
Because that is a pretty significant component of moving forward with these. I did mention that the section that talks about benefits, based on the LPA's discussion, we would add special benefit or a public benefit, because there appears to be a distinction regarding that. So that is pretty much an overview of what we're hoping to accomplish. And again, no action is needed other than feedback today. And this item will be on your agenda on November the 18th.
John, any feedback?
None.
Vice Mayor Adderholt?
Nothing additional, seems appropriate.
Counselor Woodson?
So one of my questions is, who all is involved in the negotiations of, whether it's public benefit, or what are the advantages, or what is it, who is all involved in that discussion? Is that just staff? Is that our town manager? Is that us as individuals? Because I don't think it's been clarified.
Okay, and I've had that question asked of me as well, in the context of how do you define the special benefit and the public benefit. So in the rules itself, there is a section, it's 3.1, where it begins the negotiation process. And if you're following on your agenda materials, it's on page 31. So there, the discussion begins with the town manager or the town manager's designee, typically the town planner. And then there is basically, as we've gone through the process, there's a series of meetings. And in this particular instance, the property owner developer provided a draft, and then there was further discussion there, with planning staff really focused on the technical components of it, but not so much the give and take of some of the broader things. I mentioned earlier the absence of a strategic plan. That is kind of where that issue first came up, because once that plan is in place, then the property owners, developers, they have a better idea of what might be or might not be a public or a special benefit. And then at that point, it goes to the LPA to begin their discussion for consistency primarily, but they would provide a recommendation along with that to you, and then it's at your level.
Somebody with a net.
So, okay. And I don't wanna interrupt anybody else's input, but I see Patrick in the audience, and I know Patrick had a lot of influence in the development of this, and I'm just wondering if it's appropriate when we all get through our comments, if Patrick could make some comments on how this all came about and
Sure.
the whole.
I have no hesitation. It's your call.
Leave it up to, I don't have any issue with it, cause I'm sure he's gonna have some comments after I make mine anyway.
No objection.
Okay, so let's continue with comments and then Patrick can.
I'm good.
So my comments are, the issue I've always had with development agreements, and I think it's really showing now, is I understand that the intent is to quote unquote speed up the process. But the more I read through these, or this, and the more I think about it, the more it reiterates what I had hesitation for from the beginning. Is it, no offense to the town manager, but the town manager is not a planner. And it allows the town manager or his designee to make negotiations, non-binding, to bring to the council. When you go through the other process, CPD, RPD process, it at least allows the staff to give a recommendation, one way or another. They're not making the decision, but they're allowed to make a recommendation. Then the staff, or then the LPA votes on it, and then it goes to the council, and they make the ultimate policy decision. To me, these development agreements, there's almost the implication that it's been approved by town staff to get to the policy decision makers. It's like you're taking the LPA process out of it, because they're not ultimate policy makers that the 5 people that sit up here are. And to me, you're circumventing a process. Yes, they have input, but they have really no say. And what I don't mean that derogatory, I just mean it as you have no, you can give your recommendation one way or another, but the ultimate council. So now, in my mind, the way I see it, is a development agreement that makes it to the council level without it saying the staff approves it. It made it that far because the staff felt it was enough to go forward for an approval, even if the LPA denies it. And now it sits up here, and there's not a lot of teeth in here for the town, in my opinion, to be able to say, there's a lot of flexibility and latitude allowed to a developer in this agreement, but none to the town. The town is binded by what's in this, so are they to a certain extent. But I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense, but I don't know how we can put more teeth in this. To me, it just seems too much in the developer's favor, not into, I understand they want to get to a point where they know what they can build before they invest money in all the drawings and all of that kind of thing, and I 100% get to that. I just feel like there's something missing in here that allows the town to be able to come back and say, hold on a minute, this is not what we had talked about at the LPA, this is not what we talked about in our meetings that, the staff was involved in with the developer. And developers have a dedicated staff to do nothing but look at the town's code when they're looking at development. Their sole purpose is to do that. We technically do too, but they're also looking at 15, 20, 30 other projects at the same time. And what we have seen over the last couple weeks is because things are moving so fast, things are getting missed. And we're having to go back and do things like this. And that's my biggest fear, is if that's happening now with just a simple document, what are we missing that they're seeing that we are not gonna be able to go back and do? And that's why I've always had the issue with the development agreement. There's gotta be a way to be able to, and it's hard to talk about it because we haven't really seen one in full detail yet, but it's hard for me to, you guys are the experts. How do you get something in there that gives the town more teeth to be able to come back and say, wait a minute, this is not what the initial discussions were about. This is not what was said in the LPA, this is not what was said in the council meeting. But because of the agreement, it's interpretive that you can take building A and move it over here. Because somebody else down the road said, we don't want it there. Does that make sense? Because even after the approval at our level, it has to go through several other approvals to even be able to happen on a barrier island. And what they determine could supersede what we approved with no ramifications for us to go back and alter it, if that makes sense. And that's where I would like to see this strengthened, if it's possible legally to do it.
Well.
And not lose the intent of being able to allow a developer to understand what they can do.
To be flexible.
Before they go and spend all the money.
So, the one item that you brought up was the recommendation, as far as from staff. What the rules currently say is it shall not be required for the town manager or designee to make a recommendation as to whether the town council should approve or not approve a development agreement. And I believe, I mean, your code allows that to be in there, but I think that that was trying to get staff out of the position of making a policy decision, as far as what is a special benefit and what is a public benefit. And they wanted to defer and to the deference of the town council as to what trade-offs need to be made in that process. So, I mean, it's, if you like, that could be changed, and you could ask for a recommendation, and staff will then ask based on what?
That's my problem right there.
And the what is really the public benefit or the special benefit, which I think as a town, there's really not agreement yet.
And that's the issue, you nailed it right on the head. That's the issue that I have in talking with staff members and asking why you can't make a recommendation. And the answer has always been exactly what you just said. What is it that we're recommending? We don't have enough information here to make a recommendation, because we don't know what this is gonna look like here or that's gonna be there. We just have a concept of a building, so we don't have a way to recommend approval or denial based on the land development code or the comprehensive plan. That's the issue that I have. We're taking our staff out of the equation because they have nothing to evaluate. And I don't know if there's a magic way to make it so that we can achieve what we're trying to achieve on both sides, but to me, we're taking out the strongest ally we have in a development agreement because they have nothing to go off of.
Right, and so again, what I think I've heard several times is that they're looking for the guidance on what is a special benefit and what is not.
Which is what we're
Which
getting
is
ready
what
to
we
do.
just talked about,
Right.
and then hopefully maybe after the joint meeting, there'll be a clearer direction, and then at that point, if staff is comfortable making a recommendation, they would, I'm assuming. I guess feedback from the town manager. I mean,
Absolutely. I mean, that's why we hire planners. You're right. I'm not, and there's a lot to it. You know, even the places I've been, you bring the finance director and operations director and planners to that table, and the manager usually is not a big part of that. Come in after they've already kind of negotiated to see, bless you, if there needs to be any, if there's any concern from, as I represent you in those meetings technically, that maybe we've discussed something, but I think I just emailed Amy, the 13th, next Wednesday, is joint meeting. Can you check your calendar so we can get this moving as quickly as
I've
possible?
got a conflict in the afternoon at 1:30. I have
This
to be
would
in
be-
Cape Coral for,
Let's deal with that
Okay.
later. That's good.
But I'm just saying, I'm trying to get that as quick as we can. So yeah, I agree. Staff needs more clear direction so we can go forward, because you're kind of developing something, pun intended, that we don't have a lot of direction for, so we're just kind of grasping it at things in the air.
But and I guess that's concerning to me as well, because now what you're saying is, based on what the council and the LPA determine as special benefit or public benefit, will ultimately be the decision on whether or not you bring a development agreement forward. And that's not the only criteria to be able to bring a development forward. You've got the land development code and the comp plan.
It's true, and you should,
So
and
you-
they should weigh all those together as well. Yes, correct.
And each project is evaluated differently,
Right.
so what
Yeah.
might be a special benefit for one may not be for another, depending on the size of the development itself. I would advocate that perhaps if we could have that joint meeting prior to your meeting on the 18th, because that's our opportunity to really clean some of this up. We have one project that's kind of in the middle of the process right now, but there's others that are waiting to come forward,
Sure.
and we would prefer to have better direction and clarity as to how we review these things. So if
Yeah.
you can, before another date.
Well, and this goes back to our discussion about the public benefits that we just finished up, is, once that meeting's happened, whatever gets determined out of that, does it put a larger development in a better place than a smaller development? Because not the small developments can't do what the large developments can. So depending on that conversation, a development agreement is no longer available to a smaller development because they can't meet all the public benefits or the
That
special
was the whole
benefits.
point of a development agreement, was for the little guys, so they wouldn't have to go through.
But this is going completely against what the point of it was.
Well, but if you look at public benefit or special benefit on a case-by-case basis, then you would take that into consideration, the size of the project. So If it is a smaller development, then there might be a less intense special benefit or public benefit
But this
associated
agreement
with
doesn't
that.
say any of that.
I think it does. I mean,
Where?
it doesn't say that it's a requirement. Let me go back to that. So in section 2, where it talks about the minimum content requirements, the paragraph, it's 2.16, it says, a description of any special, and we're gonna add the word, or public benefit to the town as a result of the development. And then there are some examples such as the promotion of economic development. It says affordable housing, we probably would want to change that to workforce housing, hurricane recovery. So there may not be a special benefit or a public benefit. And so when it comes to you, they may say none available. And then at that point, you could say, well, we're going to reject it. I mean,
Well,
this
elimination
is,
of blight would probably affect
this is
everything
only
right now.
saying that the agreement that comes to you has to address that at a minimum. And if there aren't any, there aren't any.
Now, wait a minute now. So you're assuming that the council doesn't have the common sense to understand that a tiny boutique hotel who's returning, who may not be able to donate a parking lot to the town or have a huge view corridor, but just needs a little extra height or a couple extra rooms, but the return of the boutique mom and pop hotel is the public benefit. And we can discern that. I mean,
Yes,
yes.
that can be
Sure.
stated.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it has that flexibility in it,
Exactly.
but how you determine that is going to be a policy decision by you all.
And to Nancy, to your point, going back to last summer, I believe it was, when we were initially talking about the comp plan, it was council's view at that time to deal with every development based on its own merits. So we wouldn't be asking you to do any differently with a development order as we would with any other development coming before you. Teach it all or respect it all on its own merits. Staff is always going to have a bite at that apple. It's not gonna get a free pass. It's where we come into that mix that makes the difference. And I think moving forward, if we kind of agree that, yes, this was originally designed to help that smaller unit, and now it's been kind of opened up to take on anything, we're still viewing it based on its own merit and what it can provide to the town at this time, this place. It's not gonna be a rubber stamp that, okay, this guy gets to get this, and the next guy, nope, because you don't meet that paradigm, it can't be. So that's where the direction came from, to kind of go into this path, that we're treating each development, lack of a better word.
And Frankie, nobody's
that's
saying
all
you're
there.
not, and I'm not trying to imply
No,
that's
no,
not
no,
the
I-
case.
yeah.
What I'm trying to say is staff interpretation on a small project may be different than that of a large project. And although I agree with you 100% that a small or business that was here before that wants to come back, in and itself is a public benefit, right? But would staff see it that way? There's nothing in here that directs you towards that. I mean, we can add it when we talk about in our joint meeting, but to me, this is just too open-ended for staff to really make any recommendation. I'm not gonna try, evidently I'm the only one that's thinking this way, so maybe I'm the one that's in the wrong, but when we have our hired staff telling me that they have a problem with it and they don't feel it's in the best interest of the town, that makes my ears go up.
Yeah.
And staff has told me that. So I'm trying to figure out what it is that is making them say what they're saying that makes my ears go up to challenge how this is not in the best interest of the town. It's,
Well,
I get the point, I don't wanna keep repeating myself. I think I've said, well, go ahead.
No, I think, because I've had some of these same conversations, and I think what they're worried about are these special benefits and public benefits, and if we get that, created for them and everybody is in agreement, then that gives them the path to when they can make those decisions. I mean, I think that's what this whole benefit thing is all about. The whole discussion about is everybody getting into agreement on it, so that you do have direction.
I think that's a fair statement to say we're just looking for the guardrails and the priorities of town council.
Where's the guardrails? So let's say I'm a developer and I come in and I meet all the things that we put together. So that, where's the guardrail? I should be able to ask for 30 stories, I should be able to ask for 40 stories, because I'm meeting your special benefit guardrails. Where's the guardrails? I thought the comp plan and land development code were the guardrails, and you could go above the guardrails based on certain things. So if I come in as a developer and say, I meet all these things that you had come out of your special meeting with the LPA, I meet every single one of them. Why can't I ask for 30 stories or 40 stories? I'm just being exaggerating, but you get my point. And how do you have a path to say, no, you don't meet that? When in clear, in the development agreement, they've met everything that the council, and where's our backstop to say, too much is too much? The 5 council members are the backstop at the time to be able to say, no, you can't do it?
Well,
Or
you
yes,
know-
you can do it?
Yes, basically,
Then
to
what's the point of having-
evaluate that.
What's the point of having a land development code and comp plan then?
Well, that's the minimum. I mean, the consistency with the comp plan is a non-negotiable. It has to be consistent. There is the opportunity for some deviations from your land development code.
You said it's the minimum. Is it the minimum or the maximum? Or is it both?
If you are inconsistent with the comp plan, the project is just basically dead in the water.
Okay.
But the other things that maybe they satisfy the comp plan, they satisfy the code to a certain extent, but there's something unique about this project that they want to move forward and provide you with something more than maybe you already have. And in my opinion, that would possibly come from items in your strategic plan or possibly in your capital improvement plan. If you had a parking fund,
Which is all
something
great,
along,
but
something
that
along
stuff is
those
over here.
lines.
We're here.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand what you're saying, but all these developments that are lining up are gonna come through before we get to there. You know it and I know it.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, in my opinion, I don't think we have anything to produce guardrails. If, the comp plan is vague, it says if you provide special benefit, yes, you can get additional height potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the guardrail? Someone comes in, I come into you, Jason, say, I'm meeting everything that the LPA and the council have set forth that meets public benefit or special benefit. I want 30 stories. What prevents you from saying no? Or recommending approval? And then it goes to the goes to the LPA, and the LPA is like, whoa, wait a minute. We don't think this is a good idea at all. We recommend no. Then it goes to the council, and then it gets approved. There's nothing there to be able to.
Well, they're guidelines, and I think once you have your joint meeting, they would show what's important to the town at this time.
Okay.
And based on those guidelines, they could formulate a recommendation that, yes, they think that it's good public policy right now to go ahead and accept this type of benefit in exchange for this. They'll then give you their opinion, because right now they're not, because they have that lack of understanding as to what is important, what is not. And, currently your procedural rules, again, does not require them to give that value or normative decision.
All right. Well, I won't keep kicking a dead horse. I'm sure we'll kick it a few more times in our joint meeting. Sorry, I keep looking at you again. You're the only one here. Patrick, you want to come up and share the other side? I'm sure you have something. I always love our discussions.
Good morning. Patrick Vanass for the record. First of all, congratulations on your elections. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Scott, congratulations. I don't really have any specific comments or any critique of what's being discussed. Just to give a little feedback, we were looking for a streamlined process to get some smaller projects approved.
What do you mean by we?
The LPA, when I used to sit on the LPA.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things that was suggested by the town attorney's office, I don't know if it was Nancy or your colleague, was that we had an opportunity to use the home rule developer agreement to craft some kind of process that could be streamlined. And it gave us a lot of flexibility as to how we craft it. If you recall, when I proposed this initially, I proposed 3 different tiers. And my thought was always for bigger projects. Obviously, the required minimum documentation that would have to be provided would be much more than a real small, boutique hotel. What we wound up with is a document that I think is fair, is flexible. I've never had a problem with, I think, is it 17 criteria in there at a minimum? That's what I recall from one of the hearings I think I heard.
I think that's correct,
But,
yes.
but I've looked at the list when it came out. It applies across the board to a small project or a big project. I think there's enough teeth in there that if you, as a council, want to ask for something specific or ask for a lot, you can. And also, if you want to allow a small boutique hotel to be able to provide very minimal documentation, and when I mean minimal, not that they get away with stuff that the bigger ones can't get away with, but instead of hiring a whole design team to craft a site plan, they could possibly even themselves do it on a grid sheet, you know, and try to do it to scale and keep it simple and save some money. So I think what you have before you works perfectly fine. Just based on the comments from the mayor, what I would say is, in my opinion, this is a negotiated contract. You have the opportunity to ask for what you want in that contract. So if someone does come in with 30 stories, you know, your direct conduit is the town manager. Town manager talks to his staff. And when he meets with you individually, if you don't like the height, you don't like certain elements, you let him know. In my mind, his job is to synthesize that information. And obviously, he's gonna get different opinions from everybody. Synthesize that, come up with what he think is kind of the general guidance he's been given. Negotiate in good faith with the developer, but there's no reason also when that gets presented to you that Andy can't come before you and say, you know, we worked together, here's the process we went through, we were in agreement on all these things, and I asked for the following, and they did not agree. And you're told what that is, and then as policymakers, you can say, we agree with you, Andy, that should be in there. Or, no, we agree with the developer, it doesn't need to be in there. So I think there's that leeway, there's that negotiation. And ultimately,
I
when
just want to stop you right there, because what you said is concerning. And Andy didn't do this. We know that there's one out there now. But I don't think what you just said, to me, that sounds like it's trying to circumvent the sunshine law. Because if he's talking to each one of us individually, and we're saying, yeah, we think what you've negotiated is good, you're predetermining an outcome before you even get before the LPA. Because he can count to 3. So I think, to me, the whole point of this development agreement was for him and staff to negotiate in good faith with you. They may feel, based on their interpretation from the council that they've heard in open meetings, they can then present it, and then it goes from there. I don't like the way that you laid it out. I think that's completely backwards of the way the system's supposed to work.
You can ask your attorney, but you hire, this council and county commissioners hire 2 direct people that they hire directly, okay? That's your town manager, and that's your town attorney. They work for you directly. So when you start talking about the sunshine law, I think we're talking different things. These are your employees, you can talk to them whenever you want.
And we don't count votes, we don't count heads.
I understand that. I'm
Yeah.
just telling you what people on the outside are gonna be hearing and what
The
they're seeing.
perception.
The perception,
Yeah.
right. That's what I'm trying to get at.
But
I
ultimately,
understand the
the-
process.
But
I know
ultimately,
how it
the
works.
decision is up to council. It comes back to you, and you can say, hell no, no way, we will not approve this developer agreement. Your staff could have worked on it, you know, for months. That doesn't make a difference. You have that final decision. And when it comes to guardrails and limits, again, we have a comp plan that allows for the ability to ask for more height and the ability to ask for more lodging density. If you want more residential density, that's a comp plan amendment. That's different. But I think when it comes to how do we deny something, even if someone gives you benefits and they have to justify the benefits are commensurate with the ask, okay? you always have the opportunity to say, no, we don't think that, there's enough weight there to justify that. Also, when it comes to approving or denying any project, and I hate that I'm bringing this up and kicking myself in the back, but you've got language in the comp plan and language in your LDC with regards to compatibility. And ultimately, that's what we see everywhere we go. When people don't want to approve a project and they don't like it, they say it's not compatible for the following reason. Height is a great example that you could say it's not compatible because A, B, C, and D. So I think you always have that opportunity. It shouldn't be assumed that because we got a few public benefits from a developer that we automatically have to agree to what they're asking.
And I appreciate your honesty and your open discussion, Patrick. You've always been good about having two-way conversations, and I think good things come out of it. What you just said, my concern, and I'll ask you honestly, if you don't have to answer if you don't want to, I don't want to put you in a spot. If you're representing a developer, and you come forth with a plan that gets negotiated in good faith between the developer, town staff, and the town manager, then it goes to the LPA. The LPA approves it and it comes to the council. Your argument is going to be, we've got approval from your town staff and your town manager, we've got an approval from your LPA, why are you denying us? Your argument's going to be, we've had unanimous approval, let's just say it's unanimous for the LPA, we've had approval, even though right now there's no approval or denial recommendation from our staff in the way the agreement is currently written. Your argument on behalf of the developer, when you stand up there, is gonna say, we believe it's consistent with the comp plan and land development code, and so does your town manager, your town staff, and your LPA, because they've approved it to get to you. To me, we still ultimately have the final decision, or whomever is sitting up here, but it becomes more of a, and maybe I'm just being guarded, to me, it allows another path to make it harder for a policy decision maker to say yes or no.
But I think,
because vice versa, if you turn it around,
Yeah,
and the LPA or the staff maybe doesn't feel that in this situation, the way it's written now, they may not feel that it's in the best interest of the town, but we're not the policymakers, so we're gonna let this development agreement go forward to the policy decision makers, because we don't make recommendations. The LPA recommends approval or denial. LPA recommends denial, it's still gonna come to the town, and it can still be approved, even though both other agencies before us have said, well, we don't really like it, but because you guys like it, you can approve it. And I guess that's where my disconnect is with this whole thing, is whether it's a large project or small project, to me, that gets worked out through each individual thing, but
I think I know
the argument from
what-
that
what
side
you're
is
saying,
going
but-
to be.
But I could tell you that personally, we always want recommendations for approval before
Of
we get
course.
to you guys.
Well,
you know?
you wouldn't
And
come
we-
forward if you
And we,
didn't.
and we work hard at it, and sometimes we go back to the drawing board and we make changes, and we try to get to yes. I think with staff, ultimately, we look at it from the standpoint is, they look at the criteria, and they try to be real objective and not let some of the public discussions influence them, but they look through it. And the first thing that we have to get through is we have to get through that checklist and make sure that we meet all the criteria. Obviously, when it comes to an issue of asking for more and providing public benefit in exchange, we fully anticipate that we're trying to put our best foot forward. In some cases, we may have either the LPA, or we could even have the town manager, if we did a developer agreement, say, because I can push the issue, I could say, Andy, let's agree to disagree on this, and we'll move forward. But I fully expect that when we get before you, Andy would say, I negotiate in good faith, I can't recommend approval for this because they did not agree to the following. Or he could present it, I 100% recommend approval, or he could say, if they're willing to abide to a few additional conditions, then I recommend approval. He's got that leeway in my mind. So I think the checks and balances are there. Obviously, I always want an approval from my client, and I work really hard to get the recommendation of approval from the LPA and from staff. I listened to the LPA meeting when it comes to benefits and special benefits. I think it was very helpful, in that, you know, at least the way I saw it is, I always saw a benefit, let's say, in a restaurant, okay? And some people, I understand, don't see it as much of a benefit. Now we're just gonna call it a special benefit. Maybe carries a little less weight because benefit to obviously the developer and a benefit to the public. I get that, it makes sense, but at least now it's not where across the board we're saying, no, we're taking off the table, it's not a benefit. It's just a benefit that's a little different and carries less weight. So I enjoyed that discussion. I think they did a great job. They also talked about economic impact, and when a developer comes to town and invests in our community, again, we all understand there's a benefit to the developer, otherwise he wouldn't be in business, he wouldn't be doing that. But we are also recognizing that we want that investment, we want those dollars in our town. So I thought it was a great meeting. And then the last thing in closing that I'd like to maybe caution you about, or maybe have Nancy look into this, we are still under Senate Bill 250. So we have adopted this developer agreement, and the developer agreement, in my mind, was less onerous and provided more flexibility, not a problem with it. Now that it's adopted, if we go back and make it more stringent, that could be a concern. Again, with same thing with public benefits, special benefits, I think if they remain guidelines, and we understand what we're dealing with, and obviously it provides guidelines also for staff when they evaluate, and you as a council when you make final decisions. But again, concerned a little bit that if we try to codify this and adopt this, it could be a concern. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to have.
I might wanna add one little comment, is Senate Bill 250 does not relate to commercial property. It only relates to residential property. So it takes out, we had a meeting with the director of FDEM, Kevin Guthrie, and his personal, or their staff attorney, pulled up statute and verse, and, cause we were using that for a few other items that we were talking with them on, and they specifically said Senate Bill 250 does not encompass commercial property.
I had that discussion with Andy about that, and the exemption, because we were talking in broad terms, and he brought that up, and I followed up with attorneys, including county attorneys locally. There is an exemption when it comes to flood issues and related to trailers, basically. That's where that exemption applies. But when it comes to regulations and code issues, it applies across the board to everybody, according to the attorneys I talked to.
Mhm.
So I think the exemption would be more flood-related and trailers, so.
Well, thanks, Patrick, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I hope you heard that that shot across the bow that we just got there, that was I know exactly what that was, but with the Senate Bill 250, if you could research what Frankie has said and what,
Yes,
that was a subtle warning.
Yes,
in my opinion.
I get that. However, I think a lot of these projects have residential in them. So because they're mixed, it's probably going to apply.
And I'm not looking to make things more, at the bare minimum out of this development agreement, I would love to at least get a recommendation from staff, one way or another.
If we think that it is adverse to SB 250.
No, as far as recommendation to move forward to the LPA and the council. Right now, we've got no recommendation. The recommendation is,
Oh.
we recommend approval because it's going to the LPA. I would like to at least see, just for another line of defense for the town, if nothing else, to be able to, you guys can make a recommendation, LPA can make a recommendation, and at the time, it's the developer's business decision if they wanna continue to move forward.
So,
I think what we'll see is, no matter what recommendations, it's pretty much clear that 5 people are gonna make the decision, so I know it's probably for naught, but at least it would give us some teeth in the
yeah,
legal world.
so Mayor, what you would be advocating for is the removal of section 3.2.2 which is saying it shall not be required for the town manager or designee to make a recommendation. So with that elimination, or the better approach may be to say that the manager or the designee will make a recommendation. For clarity, that might be the better way.
If you,
Well, it's whatever the direction is of council.
I would like to see one way or another that be put in there. I mean,
Okay.
just to do at least, and I know staff is probably not happy with having to make a recommendation and not having all the data, but, I mean, you are the experts of the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Plan, you get to do this every day. Your recommendations have some weight for both the developer and for the town, so one way or another, I think it would be important to have that in there, but I'll leave it to the rest of the council to input if they want to see that added, or if they're okay with leaving it the way it is. John?
I'm just reading 3.2.3, so.
Okay, we'll go to the other end. Scott?
I'm reading it too.
All right.
You know, for transparency, Mayor, I think there's a perception out there that all this stuff is done in a vacuum and without staff's approval or blessing, or even whether it's a recommendation or not. It's like, hey, look, our planners were involved in this, and this was their recommendation. I think that was one of the problems with the LPA is they were looking for that answer from input from you guys. So I'm okay with that. I mean, I don't know, is it gonna take up way more staff time? No?
Wouldn't think so.
No.
Okay, so if it's not gonna take up more time, I mean, I think the LPA, when I watched that meeting over again, it looked like they were all looking for your guys' not so much blessing, but
Guidance.
your input. So,
Yeah, and working on the current one that's in play, there was a lot of give and take. Nancy and I were involved with that as far as the town was concerned. And when we get to that certain juncture is what we consider a public benefit or a public use, that was the stumbling block at that point. We had the old list, going back to, a piece of art hanging on the wall, to a drinking fountain at the back of a property. I'm just being facetious here, but these were the things that were commonly asked in past. And as we go through and we started talking both sides back and forth, these were already things like, yeah, no problem, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. We didn't have any really static going back and forth with the criteria that we had. I think at that point, when we both agreed to a finished document, that was proof enough that it was being passed on. I don't think we would have gotten to a completed document or a signed agreement if we didn't come, again, backtracking into the agreement phase. I think that was a difficult part, dealing with what we had to deal with at the time, and not having Jason used guardrails. A lot of it was antiquated asks compared to what we are today.
And I get, but what you just said is exactly what we've been trying to discuss, I think this, for the last half hour, at least
No,
what
right.
I've been trying to
No,
discuss.
right. And
Is in every negotiation, you're not gonna get what you want on either side.
Right.
But if there's something in there that the staff feels, or the developer feels, is non-negotiable, but one side or the other is requesting that it be in there, and if it's, we'll just say for instance, you gotta have a clear podium, and the staff is like, absolutely not, we gotta have a clear podium, the staff says absolutely not, we will recommend denial based on this one item, but we'll send it forward because everything else is close, we know, and let the policy decision makers then make the decision. That's all I'm trying to get at.
I understand.
Because what you just said is, the way it's currently done, is it would never even get to the LPA if you didn't feel it was in the best interest of the town or wasn't meeting the needs. Well, it's not your decision one way or another to make, in my opinion. It should go through the process, but you should at least recommend that we did in good faith bargain. We didn't reach the entire agreement. Here's why we feel it didn't. And then it's a business decision on the developer side to say, we want to continue forward to the LPA. They make the recommendation. It's a business decision to move on to the council if they want. Now, I believe no matter what's recommended, in reality, they're probably going to move forward to the LPA because at the end of the day, they're the ones that make the final decision, or to the council. But at least it gives us some legal leverage to say, or it gives a little bit more input to the council at the time to say, well, I understand why you didn't approve it, but in the grand scheme of things, it's now 2 years after a storm, and that really doesn't apply. We understand what you were trying to do, but doesn't really apply. That's what I'm trying to get out of this, is just a little bit more, a little bit more flexibility for staff to be able to recommend or deny.
And flexibility is something we always want.
I don't remember what it was like to be flexible.
I think one other thing is, this was the first bite of the apple. I don't think that had happened here before, and so I think the learning curve was, straight
Well, I
up,
don't
and
wanna
now
be-
we wanna flatten that a
I
little
wanna be
bit.
careful that we're talking in general, not
Right.
Correct.
anything
Correct.
specific.
Correct, yes.
And everything going forward, this agreement is what everyone's going to use, small or big, and
Correct.
to be able to make sure that it's in the best interest of both people to be able to move forward one way or another. That little bit of that little piece, I think, would go a long way.
Makes sense.
May I summarize? I think what I'm hearing is that you are looking for a recommendation from staff and perhaps a little bit of a narrative of how the quote-unquote negotiation transpired.
I think that would be great, not just for the council, but for the public to understand, because they're allowed to negotiate in the back room with the developer, and to be able to have that open conversation. Here's why we recommended denial or approval, based on what they were offering and how that whole thing kind of played out. I think it would be beneficial to the council and the LPA and the public to be able to hear and see that.
Yeah, that narrative could easily be supplied.
Scott, you seem like you're okay with it.
Absolutely.
Councilor Woodson?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I just heard Frankie say that it stood out in my mind is, decisions based on antiquated knowledge, and our world has changed. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, and I think by putting in these guardrails, if you will, if that's what you wanna call them, but the benefits, it was the public benefit and then it's the amenities. All of those are different now. In my mind, they're different with what we need. I mean, the economic development, our transportation, we've always had an issue with transportation. Well, now's the time to address those things. Our waterways, the canals, I mean, our world has changed and we've got to change with it. And we've got to put those guidelines in for that, and I think that would help. But yes, I do agree that, we should have direction from the staff, from the town manager, and the narrative around it.
So I think a place we could add that language would be in 3.3.1. And towards the end of that, it's a very long sentence, but it goes on to say, the town manager or town manager's designee shall transmit such development agreement to the LPA. We would add with a recommendation and summary of the negotiations. And I think that would
I think that
address it.
sounds perfect.
Okay.
Vice Mayor, you okay with that?
I think that's fine. I do recommend, though, that staff, if, particularly for some of these smaller projects, if, as we know, this litany of public benefits that we're gonna put forth are gonna be somewhat subjective, I do think that if the town manager either approves or denies, or directs his staff to approve or deny, and they base their decision upon a subjective decision, I would just ask that that be included in the narrative, whether it be pro or con, because we've got folks, God love them, on our staff who don't live on the island, that may not know that, can't get a haircut in Fort Myers Beach, or there's no bathroom, south of Diamond Head. So I mean, I just think it's helpful to, or what's the advantage of this public, how strong is that public benefit that's being offered? Again, either pro or con, I just think in your narrative that you would include that, hey, this is a somewhat subjective opinion of the town based upon the value of this public benefit. Then let the council decide, but just I just think that's important to be included in the narrative.
Councilor King?
I'm kind of torn. I get both sides of the argument. I guess, for me currently, I don't need that. I'd like to see the more detailed, but it almost seems like it's a crutch. I know in other agreements, it's, well, the LPA approved it. So does that become a crutch where I don't have to really do as much work as I should be doing? And then it becomes a way to attack people up here for not following what was already recommended or not recommended. That bothers me, but then trying to forward think on future councils, I can kind of understand that, and that's why I'm torn, so.
Yeah, I understand. For me, it comes down to consistency. You look at what we've done since the storm, for instance. There's been recommendations from staff to deny based on, for no other reason, it was a design. They could do what was within the code, but they chose to design something different. It's gone through and gotten approved many, many times. Look at parallel and lots. Look at, small houses that need to be built. It was recommended as denial, but for the reasons based on the guidelines that they had to follow, and then the policymakers made the decision to approve. It has gone both ways. I just think to me, it keeps it consistent with what we have with everything else, being a new document that the town's gonna be binded to. It just, wouldn't call it a crutch, but at least it provides some clarification as to how they got to their recommendation one way or another.
And that to me is where the narrative comes in. I would love
Yeah.
to see more of that.
Yeah, that's key. Just saying we approve or deny doesn't do anything,
Yeah.
any good.
Yeah. The
Makes
narrative
sense.
is-
Here's
How we
why.
got to that point.
The timeline.
Yeah,
They asked for this, we
In our
responded with this.
negotiations, we feel this is what the town vision, comp plan, land development codes say. They don't want to agree to it, therefore we deny it because
be
of
done.
this reason.
Totally.
And then let the policymakers decide. You're looking at us, Jason, like, do you see where we're going? Don't ask me.
Sure.
Sure, whatever you say. All right, I think you have the direction.
I do.
Okay.
So we'll be adding some language to 3.2.3 and 3.3.1 with the other changes that have already are in there. And you'll see that again on the 18th.
Okay. Does anybody else need to take a break, or we'll just keep moving, but we'll discuss slowly? Everybody okay? Good. Keep moving? Scott, you all right?
Yeah.
Okay. The next is the electric bikes, discussion of the bike ordinance and electric bike regulations. Nancy?
Yeah, today I think is a Nancy day.
It is. Every day's an Nancy.
I thought it said so on the calendar.
My calendar says that.
I'll try to
It's not
make
talking.
it short and sweet, because we still have some more items on your agenda today, and I know we are getting late into the meeting. Okay, so back in May, there was an initial discussion regarding some concerns raised about having bicycles travel on your sidewalks. And then there were a couple other questions concerning whether you could force someone to stop and be very mindful of pedestrian traffic, as well as whether you could require the bicycle rental companies to put some additional information in their packets regarding the town's rules and regulations. So we've come back with a very general memo looking for additional direction if you want us to move forward and try to draft some type of ordinance for you or revise your existing ordinance. The first question is really, can you regulate electric bicycles? And based on some Florida statutes, the answer is yes, it appears you can. You are not preempted by the state statutes, or the legislature didn't preempt you, but you cannot be in conflict with what the state statutes provide. As far as the forced stop, again, you can regulate requiring them to not put pedestrians at risk. But there is another statutory section that requires the free flow of traffic, and so you really can't impede that. There is a statute that says that you have the right, that a bicycle rider must yield the right-of-way to a pedestrian and give an audible signal when overtaking and passing the pedestrian. And then the last item, very quickly, on the notices. So I wanted to focus on what your ordinance currently allows, and I did provide copies of that. Let's see, there's some Florida statutes, the copies of the sections that we referenced. I'm almost there. It would be on page...
Looks like it starts on 47.
Yes, it does begin there. What I wanted to focus on is, these rules that you have in place in, section 18-33 regarding traffic. These are very comparable to what is currently in Florida statutes, and the idea of the bicycle helmet, I believe that, yeah, and having no riders, more than one person on a bicycle. And then moving on to, section 28-81 on page 49. This is your primary, regulation that you have regarding bicycles. And then the last part is, assisted bicycles are prohibited. This is 28-84. There really isn't a definition for assisted bicycles. You know, there would be perhaps an issue whether or not that includes an electric bicycle, because your code does not specifically have reference to, electric bicycles in it, although the statute does. And then the last part on responsible parties, this is where you comprehensively say that bicycle owners or riders, including entities that rent or loan to others for use on the public right-of-way, they are responsible for compliance with these regulations. The rental contract language shall not redirect or assign responsibility for compliance with 28-81, and that's the whole litany of, statutory type, regulations. So that is our general overview of the issue, and we're just looking for more direction if you want us to do a little bit more work and bring you back a proposed ordinance change, or what is the desire of council?
I would like it for us to each give their opinion to you on the direction, so that you're not going to write something, then we're gonna come back and pick apart. I just soon give you direction, so that when you come back with a potential amendment, that
Okay.
it's
What you would like to see in it?
what you'd like to see, as opposed
Okay.
to come up with something and we've already got something, let's look at what's here.
Yeah.
If everyone's okay with that. Who wants to go first? Scott, you wanna go first?
Sure.
Okay.
My question pertains to page 51 about violation. Penalty, section 28-87. I'm okay with bicycles, electric bikes being on the sidewalks, but I think that the fine for bad behavior is a warning and then $50. That's not gonna stop anybody from being a knucklehead, Jim.
Well
I
said.
think
Well said.
If you're gonna violate this, I wanna know what the maximum fine we can.
Okay.
Because I think people really do indeed want the ability down, especially down in the downtown district, to be able to ride on the sidewalks. But it's the knuckleheads going the wrong way, going too fast, creating chaos, that I want them to be penalized, and penalized big. And then we can also send a message to the places that rent the e-bikes that, you know, with bad behavior, there's gonna be a big problem. I don't know how you.
So that's kind of an informational, requiring them to provide a brochure
Yeah.
that would have that
Yeah, here's the
warning in
rules.
it.
Here's-
Yeah.
here-
Here
yeah,
are the rules.
When you,
Right.
and you sign that rental agreement, you automatically
You
say,
agree
hey,
to this.
Okay.
you've gotta go the correct direction with traffic, and you can't go over whatever, it's 10, 15 miles an hour.
In here it says 15.
Yeah, 15, right, that's fine, but there should also be a component about recklessness, especially with regards to pedestrians. I mean, it's,
Riding down the center of the road.
Scott, before you go on in that part, can I just add, would you go as far as to say that not just the rental companies, but should it expand into the short-term rental world? Because if I'm coming down and I'm bringing my electric bike, should I be then told from the person I'm renting from what the rules and operations are, even though I'm not renting a bike? I mean,
that's
if you're gonna
open
do
up-
it, do you do it across the board, is what I'm
that's
trying
gonna
to
be a
get at.
Pandora's box. I mean, we're trying to tell people, if I'm speaking with my short-term rental hat on, we're trying to make people turtle compliant, we're there's, I mean, we could add it into our book. It's not like I have to email everybody, but
No, that's what I'm saying, is if,
Yeah.
whatever the documentation is, I think
Yeah.
should be across.
I
the board.
don't know that it needs to be in your code. I mean, that
Yeah, I
could
don't think
just
we need to
be
codify it,
information
but-
that,
I'd be more than happy as a vacation rental company to, in our book, you know, we talk about turtles and we talk about, you know, restaurants, and just have the line in there, say, hey, just so you know, e-bikes, you can use them, fines are, you know, you will be fined if for bad behavior, something like that. I don't know if we codified though.
Well, that's what you were talking about, Nancy, is putting it in
yeah,
there, that
I
it would
mean,
be.
it could just be, town could just ask those with, vacation rentals. We have a list, right, of all our vacation rentals on the island that we would, encourage the distribution of information related to, bicycle operation. And it's really for the benefit of the person who's renting, because without knowing, I might be on the sidewalk and I wouldn't be reckless, but, you know, I might find myself in trouble unnecessarily.
Well, maybe we could go about this a different way to help speed things up a little bit. Or just, should we at least go down the line and say if people are in favor of allowing them on the sidewalks and start there? I mean, I would hate to have each person say, I wanna see this, and then there's a majority that doesn't wanna see them on the sidewalks.
I'll start, yes, I'm okay.
Karen?
I would say yes with a.
Yeah, then we can go into the discussion of what's gonna be.
Yeah,
for-
with the speed
Right.
enforcement, that kind of thing, yeah.
Vice Mayor Adderhall?
I'm not sure I can say in one word, but I'll try.
1 minute?
Come
This
on,
is the-
Jim.
This is
Just
the
give me-
easiest layup for one word.
Give me a minute, because I've
right.
talked to the sheriff's department, I've talked to our
Well, I
enforcement
think we'll get
team.
into all of that. I just wanna, are you in favor of at least having the discussion of having them on the sidewalk, whatever the enforcement? or-
I'm in favor of having the discussion.
Okay. Counselor King?
See,
I am as well. Okay, so we got that out of the way. Now we can go into at least, well, do we want to include the beach at the same conversation? Because it's all encompassing, isn't it?
It is, but I believe you have a code that doesn't allow bikes on the beach.
It is, that's why I'm saying, do we want to go
Do you
down the
wanna
line again and see if the
open
beach is
that?
included? We can work out the
Okay.
details after.
Any bikes on the beach?
I think
Well,
it
currently
is
it
a
says e-bikes are
prohibition.
not allowed on the beach.
Correct.
But regular bikes are allowed on the beach.
That's correct.
Huh?
Electric bikes are not allowed on the beach.
Right, so that's what, but they're, the two ordinances are, or the two sections are pretty close to aligned. Right now, it's not allowed. Do we want to at least have the discussion?
Explore if-
Right,
yeah.
allowing them.
Yes.
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 No.
John?
I wasn't paying attention.
Beach.
Bikes on the beach.
Bikes on the beach.
E-bikes.
Yes, I'm willing to have a discussion.
All right, so,
Well, I'm willing to have the discussion.
That's what we-
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay, so we will have the discussion.
just didn't want to make sure it was a
All
hard
right.
no, everybody was against it or something.
And
Anything
I'm
else?
sorry I wasn't paying attention.
That's all right. Who can afford it these days anyway?
Is that anything else?
Oh, no, go ahead, Scott, you
No, I'm-
finish.
I said my piece.
Karen?
So I am in favor of doing the e-bikes. I think there has to be, speed limits, which is already in here, 15 miles per hour. You know, I think a lot of people use this as their primary mode of transportation. A lot of the servers, the people that work here,
Retired? people?
retire. Yeah. I don't know if I trust myself on an e-bike actually, but,
It'd be fun to watch.
oh yeah, it would be entertaining for sure. But you know, as I look at this vehicles prohibited, and I don't know, maybe I'm opening a whole nother can of worms, but in our vehicles prohibited, we are actually prohibiting not only e-bikes, but electronic skateboards, hoverboards, you know, you see them all the time. I mean, they're everywhere.
Motorized wheelchairs.
Motorized wheelchairs, so, you know, the only thing I would disagree with seeing on the sidewalks are golf carts.
Yeah, no way.
But, you know,
Mopeds.
a motorized wheelchair, that's, why wouldn't
So
we
I-
allow that?
I think motorized
People don't-
wheelchair.
Yeah, they're already excluded.
They are,
Yes.
right, they are allowed. 'Cause
Oh, they
this-
are
this-
allowed?
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh, it does not apply to motorized wheelchair.
right. And it's primarily, I believe, for ADA concerns.
Oh, here we go. Motorized micro-mobility devices, including but not limited to electric scooters, electric skateboards, one-wheel devices. No, and hoverboards are prohibited.
Right. So it's there.
It is there, so. But do we want it to be? I don't know. I question that.
All right. Vice Mayor?
With respect to the sidewalk issue, I've spoken at length with the, I don't want to say anybody's name, but with the sheriff's department as well, and with our own enforcement division. And I think we're kind of kidding ourselves on the speed limit issue because they can't gauge speed. Their equipment doesn't gauge speed, and so that's a challenge. And my original thought was if you're going to pass a pedestrian, you come to a complete stop before you do it. Counselor Woodson gave me some good food for thought on that. And so I've thought about it, and I honestly, until this morning, could not come up with language. And we got a wonderful email from a fellow named Philip. I won't say his last name because I probably would butcher it because I don't know if I could pronounce it, but it was very thoughtful. And he suggested some language in this particular area that says, pass pedestrians at only a speed that allows you to maintain control and forward motion of the bike. And I thought that was pretty interesting. Again, pass pedestrians at only a speed that allows you to maintain control and forward motion of the bike. And I think, I don't want to put Tom on the spot, I think he thought he could find that enforceable. I also thought, Philip also suggested audible notification of a pedestrian when approaching from behind. And that's general enough. So hopefully, what I'm trying to do is find a tool and have language where our enforcement team can actually enforce this and our friends in the sheriff's department can enforce it. Because I do believe there are a lot of folks who are very concerned about this. And again, I don't like to legislate just for knuckleheads, but, and I do understand the times are changing. And if our friends on the electric bikes as well as traditional bikes, and the sad thing is the vast majority of our folks who are using these are good folks and they will be more than courteous to their fellow residents. But we do need to have some kind of proviso in there that gives our enforcement team something to work with if somebody's being rude and quite frankly not respecting safety as they pass. And there's nothing worse than that when you've got a dog on a leash or you're just having a quiet walk and somebody just zips by you. It's very startling. It's dangerous. People with kids. I mean, it's bad. So I thought that language was helpful, Nancy. I don't know if that helps you as a lawyer, but I thought it was probably the best phrase that I have seen, better than I could come up with. And I ran it briefly by Tom. I don't want to put him on the spot, but he thought that he could work with that. And so anyways, I would just need some kind of language like that in an ordinance like that to be comfortable passing it.
John?
I think enforcement's gonna be the toughest part. I'm all for tougher penalties for knuckleheads. But who's gonna enforce it? Is it LCSO? Is it our rangers? Is it both? And again, when you find out you can't do a speed limit, that makes, that bothers me. I'd like to go forward with this and study a lot of the folks' concerns as pedestrians that whether it's just a bicycle or e-bikes come upon them and any possible bad repercussions from what could possibly happen. I don't want to stand in the way, but I would like to at least revisit this, say a year and with some data to show either A, we were successful, or B, it wasn't because of these reasons.
Anything else?
Not at this time.
Yeah, I share a lot of the same concern. I think, to your point, Counselor Safford, make it known that if you're doing something wrong, but how do you enforce it? As Vice Mayor said, we've been told you can't enforce speed. It's just not going to happen. One thing that you can enforce that is very easy to see if someone's going the wrong direction with traffic. That's something anyone from a distance can see. That's something that you could enforce, I think. However the enforcement goes, that to me would be the biggest, danger. We have got data from the LCSO, and I believe even the fire department, saying bicycle accidents in the last 5 years have been, bicycle pedestrian accidents have been slim to none. I would be in favor of, you know, the requirement of making them ride with traffic. I think that's something that's visual. You don't need a radar gun to do it. Who's gonna enforce it? If we're being honest, I don't know the LCSO is gonna spend a lot of time pulling people over. You know, I've heard people say, well, you know, can you put it in that they have to be pedaling, you know, pedal assist? Okay, but if you're moving this fast, but you're doing 25 down the sidewalk, you know, what are you really doing? So I've never been a fan of making policy for the minority, and I think when it comes to e-bikes on the sidewalks, the knuckleheads or the bad apples are the minorities. I like your idea, John, of putting a revision. We'll look at this, maybe do it through season, see how it goes. We can get some data then at the time if there's been crashes, if there's been anything. I think most people that ride bikes, whether it's electric or not, know how to be good stewards. They know they're supposed to ring a bell. They know that I'm on your left, I'm on your right. I don't think you're gonna be able to enforce someone getting off their bike to walk around the side. I mean, they're just not gonna do it. They're gonna go on the road or go around, and they're gonna do whatever, but I think just making it very simple, very clean, but I do think you have to have something in there to be able to have enforcement. And the easiest thing that I've seen so far would be, you gotta ride with traffic. And if you're doing that, then go after it. You know,
Have
give it a
you
try.
checked with what Sanibel has done? They just recently revisited.
They did, and they've got, the problem is Sanibel has their own police department.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
I
So
get it.
they can enforce it, much like,
Right.
I mean, no
They
offense to
also have
Tom, if
bike
Tom
paths
stops somebody on the
everywhere.
sidewalk and says, hey, you're going too fast, or this is a class 3 bike, not a class 1 bike, I'm gonna write you a ticket, they're gonna probably look at you and go, pound sand. I don't have to show you my license, you're not a police officer.
It's absolutely true. We don't have the ability to do a forced stop. So what we do in those type of circumstances are we call LCSO, whoever the closest deputy is, and we follow and observe, and then we'll have LCSO do the forced stop. So for compliance. Most of the time, it doesn't come to that, to be very honest with you. Most of the time, you stop somebody and say, hey, can you just be careful, please? And most people are like, yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention. That's been what we do a lot. Now, having the directional travel would help, because that allows us then to slow down where they are. So if they're heading with traffic, it's easier to go up and say, that's perfect, and if they're not, then you can at least get in front of them and say, can you please go to the other side and head with traffic as you travel on the sidewalk. Just know that if we take this and we open it, I don't know what the lawyer would speak to this, but we gotta be careful, especially on the beach. If someone gets injured, I don't know if it opens us up to liability, because we've now changed it from saying it's prohibited to now we're allowing it, and if someone gets hurt, does that open the town to liability? That was my only point to that, so it's just
So
something
would
to
that be
figure out.
any different than a public sidewalk, though?
Same difference in some respect, it's just that people don't lay down on the sidewalk usually. So,
And not the person on
Well,
the bike.
challenge accepted.
yeah, yes, well,
We
not,
actually had somebody run over somebody on.
You didn't have a hotel downtown.
Again, I understand your concern on the beach, but those of us that have been here and rode on the beach many, many times,
It's hard.
not everybody's gonna do it. Most people that have an electric bike, they're not exactly cheap. So
Right,
most
that's true.
people don't ride their electric bikes on the beach because it wrecks them. I mean, the sand getting in there,
It's all-
some may
yeah.
do it, some may
Makes
not,
sense.
but you can't, I don't know, I have a hard time policing or policy making on knuckleheads. And not that I wanna see anybody getting hurt, and I think revisiting it, if we see data in 6 months that says, hey, we went from having no accidents to now we got 350 because somebody's
That's
riding
true.
down the beach or the sidewalk, then you address it, but the fact that there's been none in 5 years tells me that people are doing it now anyway. We're not, the very few, we've had people come right out and say, we're doing it anyway, so.
Well, plus we have signs out there. We just need to get the signs down if we're gonna allow it, because they defeat the purpose. But the thing, I saw something yesterday that, when you talk about, legislating knuckleheads, I saw a woman that she was on her bike, she had a vacuum cleaner, she obviously had been to a job cleaning an apartment or something, or she was a maid and she was using that and she obeying the rules, so you wanna be careful not to start hitting the people who are actually earning a living by riding that bike in town because they maybe can't afford a car or choose not to, so, yeah, it's just something to be mindful of. I agree, don't legislate because you got knuckleheads.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment that the vice mayor has said about not wanting it on the beach, and I understand, people laying in the sand, and I understand that, but to me, it's, if we really wanna truly promote people getting out of their cars and not slowing down traffic and allowing another avenue for people to be able to do that, you can put in there it's wet sand only, I mean, something again that you could visibly see, that you're riding an electric bike on a, some people can try to ride with those big fat tires, they can go on. Now,
Still
that's
doesn't
a
work
huge-
well.
I got an
Trust me,
idea.
it does
Can we
not
put in
work
there, we
well.
gotta put Karen on an electric bike and send her down the beach on the soft sand and however far she goes
I'm gonna
without
need
falling.
elbow guards, shin guards, help.
But, anyway, I just think allowing, because a lot of our residents on the south end have shown that, and on the north end, have shown that they wanna be able to traverse and go back and forth, but they don't feel safe riding the bikes, even in the bike lanes. And anybody that's been in traffic or been driving behind, you see these trucks, and their trailers are in the bike lanes, and I think someone posted a video of it, the guy was,
The Miros, because they know that they can pass you, but their Miro's hanging out,
Yeah.
and the Miro's what hits the cyclist.
so I just, you look like you would like to.
Just ask a question to Tom here. Tom, would it be helpful, and I know you've got other things you guys need to do, but would it be helpful to have language in there that says something to the effect that pass pedestrians at only a speed that allows you to maintain control and forward motion of the bike? In other words, would that help you if somebody zips by an elderly couple at 25 miles an hour with no heads up, no anything, just zip, would that help you to have some language in there that you can hang your hat on?
So I didn't do this before. Thomas Yazzo, Compliance Security Manager for Fort Myers Beach, for the record, sorry.
Retired police officer.
Yeah, I'm that too. So I think the language would be subjective in that way for us to enforce it, because then I'd have to do a visual speed estimate, and none of my people are trained in visual speed estimates for that. I think it would be better to not designate a speed, because again, that's hard to
But
enforce.
this language doesn't.
But that language doesn't. So having us be able to say, hey, listen, we believe that you're acting a little reckless, but I think that would be a warning phase. To write a summons to what my people determine to be reckless would be kind of hard to work through testimony later. That's the only thing I'm saying for that.
But you'd at least be able to stop them.
We would.
And
We
get
would-
their attention.
We would be able to, that would give us probable cause to at least say, hey, excuse me, can you please slow down? And I know probable cause is not so much the issue for us, because this is more of a civil side than it is criminal, but at least gives us that ability to say, hey, please, pay attention, you're being, and again, most of the time when we stop people as a whole, they're fine with saying, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Thank you.
There's been very few altercations where people start getting nasty that we have to bring a deputy into the play on that.
I'm okay with the language, partly for what you're, I think, saying there. I don't know that anybody's ever gonna, it's to me subjective. Hey, you're going too fast, how do you know how the person riding the bike can control a bike or but what it could do is potentially allow us something in the litigation world if, God forbid, someone was to get hurt and through investigative, whatever the police do, find that they were riding recklessly, whether they were drinking, whether they were whatever.
And it would
provides
also
teeth
give
to
some
it.
language to put to the bike rental companies and to
Sure.
the short-term
Yeah.
rental, whatever we decide to do. Just give some guidance.
Yeah,
Because we
well-
can't use a speed limit, so we can at least give some guidance that, hey, we do require you to be courteous when you pass pedestrians, and here's the language. And again, also that audibility language as well, I think we need to add as well.
It's like the Mr. Yuck sticker. You remember when you were kids, you remember the Mr. Yuck, you had to put it on there? You know you're not supposed to drink it, but they put something, this is kinda like,
Yeah.
you know you're not supposed to be doing this, but we're gonna put it out there just for those of you that don't know that you're not supposed to do it.
Can we also,
Don't care.
if I could ask this, could we divide these into two separate votes, one for the sidewalk and one for the beach? I just, on the beach issue, I really wrestle with it, because my wife and I, we have the big fat tire bike, and we do ride on the beach on low tide, and we've learned over the years to give wide berth to people when we're passing them, out of respect for them, and that's a lot of experience living and spending a lot of time on the beach. When it is low tide, it is a tremendous potential transportation corridor, but we also try to avoid any of the birds, because every time you ride near the birds, they fly and they exhaust the birds, as they're trying to, there's a lot of issues, nature issues. And the other piece of the beach is, that I found, is that with the little kids on the beach, one of your mindsets with children on the beach is just assume that they're going to run in front of you.
It's true.
Because inevitably they will. And the other piece of the beach piece is that, you know, when people walk along the beach, that's like the beach is one of our key lures here, and it's the great solitude moment, particularly as you're walking further south. And to have somebody zipping by an electronic bike, and again, the mayor's right, a lot of people won't ride their very nice electronic bike on the sand because it's hard on the bikes, and very expensive bikes. But there's just something about that majesty of walking along the beach, and to have that disrupted, I think I'd love to see us try the sidewalk thing and then do it incrementally, but if people want to do them both, I'd like to have separate votes, because I do think that's a different issue on the beach, because there's just something sacrosanct about the beach that gives me pause.
I get that. And if I was playing devil's advocate, I would say, you know, I've heard from several people in the south end that, you know, they can't walk the beach anymore. They can still ride the bike, but they can't walk from the south end to the north end, but their pedal assist bike will allow them to get to the north end. And they have just as much right to the public beach, in my opinion, as someone that's enjoying
Yep.
walking or playing with their kids. So
Well,
what we're doing is in my opinion, we're taking away a right from someone as opposed to allowing the people that we're gonna have knuckleheads no matter which way we go.
As we're hashing though, and that's a good point, if we're hashing things out, maybe if for folks that get a doctor's note or somebody who's a disabled vet, then they can ride their bike on the beach. I think that would require special consideration though.
To me, that would be like the medical marijuana card. I mean, they're just handing them out, and you could probably get anybody to sign on. And how do you enforce it? I mean,
Yeah, you turn staff into babysitters and yeah.
either you do it or you don't, I think, and there's no directional traffic on the beach to be able to really look at, but again, I'm not out there every day. I would lean on Beach Patrol to see how many bikes are they really seeing out there.
I am out there, and we ride to Bowditch at least once a week from the very south end, and I see it, and there are not a lot of bikes on the beach right now. And again, you really have to be very selective when you ride on the beach, and low tide is the time. If we go down to the north end and get too carried away down there, and we start coming back when the tide starts rising, in that
It's
soft sand,
miserable.
it's tough.
It's not
You
easy
gotta
to
move
ride.
back to the sidewalk and then get over there. It's a challenge. Now, your wagon, on the other hand, does not have that issue, so that
Shouldn't. Do you obey the traffic laws when you're riding your bike?
absolutely, 100%.
You will now.
We have a good percentage that don't.
And the other piece of the puzzle on the sidewalks is if you don't like this concept of slowing down when you see a pedestrian ahead, you can just move back onto the street, especially
Right.
off-season. I mean, there's lots, then to move back on the sidewalk.
Well, maybe then for that part, again, something that's visually able to see the wet sand, if you put that in there, I mean, it's,
Right. Closer to the surf.
well, I mean,
And please remember,
how enforceable it is, I don't know. but
enforcement on
it's-
all of this is first person, so it has to be either a ranger or a deputy who sees it. Taking third person testimony is not something we're gonna be able
Right.
to say, oh, that person did this, and then we're gonna have to, we can't do that. So for us to do it, it has to be the officer or the ranger has to visually be there in that space when this happens. We can go back and talk to people if somebody's injured, of course. If there's an accident, then we can deal with that, but we can't go from third person testimony. We all know how reliable that can be sometimes too, because it's very subjective, especially when you're talking about what happened. But this is gonna be when our staff are there and where they're gonna be. So just be conscious of that when we talk about this. This is gonna be a kind of small case scenario where we're gonna be finding people doing this. I hate to say that, but that's the
I think
truth.
what we're trying to put in there is language that can be provided to the rental companies or potentially short-term rental companies that says, this is what you're not supposed to do. Most will abide by it, but enforcement, we all agree, I don't know, enforcement's gonna be something that, you know, unless they're really going the wrong direction and they're doing something pretty egregious, but.
Can
When
somebody?
they do that, we do enforce it. We've had young people down here on motorcycles and are doing wheelies down the middle of the street, and we stop the space, we get the LCSO online, and we have made stops for stuff like that, where they then take care of it, and we've written summons for that as well. So, but that's, again, that's a very small percentage, as you say, with the knuckleheads, to most of it. Go back to the beach side of it, I really have no dog in this fight, but I will say we have to be very conscious of, to the vice mayor's point, children. Children do not pay attention to what's happening around them, and the beach is a safe space for them. So they can run around. They know on the sidewalk or the roadway, I gotta watch out for the big metal beasts that come flying by me. But out there, and parents are the same way, parents are not sitting there watching to see what bike is flying down at 25 miles per hour. So I just give that as my observation to this, just to be yeah.
No, it makes a good point, but it's so hard to tell. I mean, if I'm pedaling my bike down the beach, not using any pedal assist, it's technically still an electric bike, but my battery's dead, I'm pedaling down the beach, you know? How do you, I'm not gonna die on the sword either way on that one, but I think we need at least to try the sidewalks, and we'll talk about the beach separately. I don't disagree with that, but at least try and see how it works.
There's just one thing about this whole debate that's kind of nagging at the back of my mind is, are we trying to solve a problem that really isn't there? Other than people are right now illegally riding on the sidewalks. But if the data for the last 4 or 5 years shows there's been no accidents, but that's why the people are going on the sidewalk is because they're worried about an accident. And now are we creating a problem with accidents on the sidewalk? I don't know. It's very ironic to me that I'm okay with this, but I 2 years ago, and this is me, I'm a big target. I rode out in the street when I was campaigning. The only time I had an issue was trying to get down past what was the old Rag Coconut on North because there was really no bike lane. So that's where this whole thing for me started, being on the sidewalk. But we're not, if we don't have any data that shows there's any accidents for bicycles getting hurt, is it just because I'm afraid of that? I get it. People told me not to ride in the street, but I guess because I thought maybe I'm visible. I don't know.
Could we put a seasonality piece in there maybe? Allowed during off-season? I mean, but the only person I see on the beach is...
I would be worried about subjective enforcement to that, and we do that, some of that already, but just be conscious that that could be subjective
Okay,
enforcement.
just
if we change
just
it.
asking a question.
Yeah.
It seems like, I get your point on the beach when it's spring break and there's kids all over the place, but there's some mornings where I don't see another person for 20 minutes, so.
Sure. That might just be you.
Yeah, that's me.
Or because he's out.
Yeah, John, I see your point. I don't know that, you know.
No, I'm willing to go forward.
Yeah, but I mean, the
It
changes
boggles
that,
my mind a bit.
I think what it will change is, you know, talking with Lee County Sheriff's Office, how many calls, and you guys, hey, there's a bike on the sidewalk,
Yeah.
it's an electric bike, what are you gonna do about it? And to your point, unless they see it, there's nothing they can do about it. A deputy can see a bike going the wrong direction down a sidewalk from sitting in traffic from a mile away. That's something that they can enforce, but to your point, they have to see it, or you have to see it.
Yes.
I don't know that this is gonna change the world, to your point, John.
No, and maybe I should take that a little further, is, I guess, with the traffic situation, then I understand why that's being driven with e-bikes and those kind of things, and I fully support that.
Are we getting somewhere on at least the sidewalks? I think you've got some
I think
consensus on the
so.
sidewalk part of it.
I think so on the sidewalk, and you want us to come back with some kind of language and an ordinance change to that effect?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
And we'll also work on a brochure, something that can be handed out, posted and that type of thing that we can,
Give it a rental company.
you know,
That
pass
would
on
be
the
great.
left, make sure pedestrians on the right, you know.
With the language, I think that the vice mayor read in, I think that's,
It's good.
I mean, and then
Could we task the public safety committee to
absolutely, come up with language. Sure.
No signs?
So the draft that we come up with, send it to public safety first for their input, and then bring it to you?
Yeah, well, let's send it to their next meeting and let them hash out language, that way you can get it to the order, well, whenever their next meeting is.
Their next meeting?
Well, that's what I meant.
Yeah, a meeting, how's that?
Well, I don't know
when
when
their
the
next.
next.
you can get it.
I don't-
There you go.
Next, it might be next month before.
Yeah,
The next meeting.
we're a little backed up, yeah. Okay,
Okay. Now, the beach.
yeah.
Scott, how do you feel on the beach part of it, one way or another?
Man, I'm totally on the fence right now. I mean, I was all for it and, you know, but now the safety issue, just, I think we need some more discussion.
Maybe,
Sorry.
maybe we send that part to the, I mean, it's all gonna go anyway.
Public safety. For to that committee for
I like that
input?
idea.
Yeah, let the public safety, hash out the language or the recommendation, that's what they're there for.
Yep, I like that idea.
How do you feel about making a recommendation? I mean, we asked staff for recommendations on agreements, deviation development agreements and CPDs and things like that. Do you have a recommendation?
So my recommendation would be the sidewalks make sense, letting people ride on the sidewalks as long as they act safely, and having a directional provision put in there. I think the beach is a dangerous space, personally, for e-bikes, because they will do 25 to 30 miles per hour, and people do. And that, I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it does happen. And I don't wanna ever recommend something and then have a kid get hit.
Thank you.
Pretty safe recommendation to me. So do we really need to, I'm not gonna live or die on the sword over the beach part of it. I think the sidewalks is more important, but I'm perfectly fine with keeping the beach the way it is and not.
Okay. Is that the consensus of council? Just to leave it right now as it is?
In the interest of safety, I'm okay with
Yeah.
doing it for the beach
Yeah,
part.
I'm a hard no on the beach.
Yeah, I'm fine with the beach, and like you said, I mean, there are a few people that are gonna do it, but for the most part, these bikes are too expensive to get all sanded and corroded, so.
Good point.
Unless you got a lot of $2,000 bills.
There you go. Which
They
I
make
don't.
those?
Yeah, right.
Batteries and salt. They make unlimited bikes.
Okay, you've got direction
No,
on
need
this?
to build.
Yes,
Move
I
on?
do. Thank you.
Okay. Now the certification of vote of appointed advisory board members.
So this item is before you for discussion. We do have a draft resolution in your agenda packet. I'll read the title so everyone is aware of the content of the conversation. So it's a resolution of the town of Fort Myers Beach, Florida, amending section 5 of resolution 23-182 as amended by resolution 24-178 to include certification of the vote by the town council before a vote to appoint members to the town's advisory boards, committees, agency, and commissions, and providing for an effective date. So as you recall, recently you have revisited your qualifications for individuals who serve on your committees, and associated with your code, we made a change to the code to accommodate basically removing residency requirements. Then we went into your rules and we amended paragraph or section 5 that includes that we didn't address this previously, but we would like to address it now, your method of voting. What we found was that there was some concerns raised by members of the public, and I think the press, that it was not as transparent as your process needs to be. And so we went back and we looked at it, and there was also some confusion about when there were tie votes. So we would like to propose to you somewhat of a more transparent process that hopefully, everything is open to the public so they can view it at the time it's occurring, as well as any possible inadvertent errors made on calculating who has received the correct number of votes or not. So the revision that we have considered is that basically when it's time for an appointment, each individual council member would make your selection. You would have a ballot and you would write it down. And then you would publicly announce what your vote is as far as which people you are voting for. And I'm going to defer to Jason Green because we're trying to move more.
Jason Freeman.
Sorry. We're trying to move more into the electronic age. And a lot of cities already have software where as you're voting, you can visually see it. Unfortunately, we don't have that at this time. And I understand from Andy that we will hopefully, when we go to the new building, have something that's a little bit more transparent. So what we would propose is that when you're doing your vote selection, that you announce what your vote is, and either Jason or Amy, someone would be actually inputting the numbers into an Excel spreadsheet. So we don't have the right, there we go. So as you announce, it would populate. So then there's a visual for members of the public to see how the actual votes are calculated, so we avoid any type of mathematical errors. So that's one possible change to your current process. And this would allow everyone to know what your actual vote was by the certification. So when I say certification, once that was populated into the Excel spreadsheet, you would acknowledge that, yes, this is what I really voted for. And then at that point, the next step would be to go ahead and appoint the individuals who have the highest numbers. Now, if you have a tie, there was some confusion because I think your code, the rules, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, basically provide that if there's a tie, then you have a revote on the people that are tied. We would suggest that for purposes of simplicity, that you put those two individuals back into the pot, and then you just revote on whoever is left. And that's what this is saying. Today, this is a discussion to get your feedback. We would like to bring back a resolution to you on November the 18th, so you could have your final vote. At that time, we would also like to run through your last set of appointments so that there is no question as to what your vote was, your certification of that truly was in fact your vote, and then the appointment.
Can you run through the tie part again for me, please?
So let's say that we have five, or let's say we have, I don't know, help me out here.
3 people.
How many?
2 to 3.
2 to 3 people. And if two individuals, so you took your top people with the votes, say the first 2 people got 5 and 5, and then there was a 3 and 3, and then you had others. The 3 and 3 would go with the others, and all those would be part of the revote. As I understand your rules now, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, it would just be a revote on those 2 people that tied. So it kind of expands your ability to pick people within that process.
Okay, thank you.
That makes no sense, because mathematically, you could be around all day. You never dwindle down the pile. I think the way it is now, you take the top,
Top 5, or top 2 that got 5.
the 2 remaining, the other ones didn't get any votes,
Well, they may have gotten 1 or 2 votes,
Right.
but they didn't hit that 3.
So maybe do it that way. Anyone that received a vote goes back into the second round.
That's what she's saying.
Well,
No,
there,
she's saying
there could
everyone.
be, yeah, there could be someone with 0 votes.
Oh, I see. So anybody who received a vote. That would help narrow it down a bit, but
You gotta narrow it down.
It's your discretion, it's your voting process.
I think we know where you stand, Scott. Karen? The way it is, or do you wanna go to a hybrid?
On the tie issue.
I would
Tie.
I would go to anyone who received a vote. Or not, you know.
I agree with that.
Counselor King?
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Your direction.
I have direction, and again, you'll see this on the 18th, and at that point, you'll take a final vote on the resolution.
So this is for future, but we're going back now to what happened specifically about Murph then, is that?
Yes, yes, Murph
So-
will be voted on the 18th, and we're gonna go through the others as well, just so we have a very clear record as to who voted for who and the appointment.
Now, we put a pause on everybody, committee-wise, meeting in October because of all the activity with Helene and Milton and the other necessities of rescheduling meetings. When are we restarting committees then? Some of them are already starting to meet again. I understand audit committee is got a meeting scheduled for this month.
Next Thursday.
Yeah,
Murph
but those
doesn't
weren't-
have anything. It would have probably been normally the 13th.
But audit
Is
committee
that
hasn't.
gonna
hasn't
interfere,
met.
I
I don't
guess
think
is
the
the
audit
question.
committee changed at all, did it?
No,
They
it did not
didn't
change.
You know, we haven't had a meeting in 3 months, so.
The only one really affected by the the count is Murph.
And board cabinet.
Was Murph, correct,
On
but,
board
but there were
Well,
some
they had
concerns,
other-
Rick.
They had extra seats. Or there was more applicants than positions, so.
So we're gonna go back and redo the ones we already did?
Yes, for purposes of
Does
transparency.
that include the LPA as well?
No. The LPA, we did a different, process. We did announce and you did certify, and then you appointed. So we did a little bit different there.
Getting back
Okay.
to the question of committees meeting and when will, are we notifying folks? Are we making decisions on?
Well, we would hope that your vote doesn't change. I mean, it's really more for record keeping and transparency of what occurred. But if it does change, then yes, we would notify.
Because board cab's next meeting is November 20th.
Should be the 13th. But obviously that can't be done now because
That's correct.
we're meeting on the 18th to discuss and make a decision on that. So does this, the
Murph
committee
would
get
move to their
moved to
normal December meeting.
Just December? Okay. Thank you.
Does Murph know that?
Not yet.
They
do
Waiting
now.
on- We're waiting
We
on
have
what
to see
you
what
decide
happens.
today.
Right, got it.
Again, this is really, when things happen, right, things happen. We try to develop processes where things don't happen. And so this is our attempt to really try to be as transparent as possible and avoid any type of little mathematical miscalculations by having a visual for members of the public as well as you all.
And I think that's a great idea because I think it was always a concern of we're filling out a private paper and turning it in, and then somebody has to make a request of what happened. So I think that's smart, and I appreciate the transparency.
Okay,
Okay, that's it. Thank
All right.
you.
sounds good. Fireworks. Who's going first? Who's going?
Yeah, so we have a contract signed for the fireworks company. We also have for the barge. The issue is the funding. We ended up having to pay for all of the funding. We were basically told we were going to have a funding source through some donations that we did not get. So we ended up paying the whole pot.
Was this for the 4th of July or?
4th of July.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
which
you.
comes out of our special events budget. Our special events budget for the total year is only like 30 or 35,000. So we need to figure out a way, I guess, either to adjust the budget or some other way to be able to fund this because we can't really rely on the donations that have been coming in.
So what's the total cost?
About 80,000 because
Because the barge.
only because of the barge is more than half of that. We can't shoot them off from the pier anymore because obviously there is no pier, and that's a huge cost. Is renting the barge for whatever it is, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days while they set it up, putting it out far enough. You know, we got to work with the Coast Guard on that too with their permits, our own permits. So having the barge really puts us at a disadvantage financially, but it's the only way to do them. Right now, we don't have enough land on the island to do it with the fire range, with the range that they need to clear. We don't have any space. We inquired about that too. Can we use Bay Oaks to shoot them off? They said no, the firing range isn't enough at Bay Oaks or anywhere else on the island. Actually, they basically said nowhere on the island. So,
Jeff, did you say that we're already contractually obligated with this firm?
we have contracts in place.
Does that mean we pay whether we're gonna be billed whether we pay
No,
or
we have
not?
not signed the contracts. We have them in hand.
Gotcha.
But I need a direction as to where to go.
I guess I asked that because we had an interesting question during our candidate debate about drones and other options. And I just was curious if you've explored that at all.
Yeah, we have. It's about that 70,000
Is it really?
Yeah,
mark.
that's expensive.
Yeah, for the drone shows. They are cool. We've looked into it. They have a lot of great shows.
Can I ask?
A lot of people like the booms too. I mean,
Yeah.
some like it, some don't. Actually,
I don't
so
want
it
to
goes either way.
digress on this, but I'm just curious on the drone. The drone concept is, again, traditionalist, love the fireworks, but the drone concept's interesting, not only from the environmental side, but it's also interesting, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but can the drone a show literally kind of move down the 7 Mile Barrier Island and kind of go back and forth and kind of all of a sudden
Range.
give everybody some range on that? I mean,
It may.
not for the
I
whole
haven't
show,
looked
but
at
for,
that part of
I
it,
think
but-
there's a limited range that they can go away from their,
Currently, yeah.
but how cool would it be if the show just for
Sure.
like a few minutes went down the island a little bit so everybody kind of got a taste and
and that may,
That'd be-
that may
that'd
be
be-
something more for July or next year. We're within 60 days of New Year's Day, and so we don't have
Yeah.
time to get a drone show set up.
what's your recommendation for funding?
That we just get with Joe and find
Okay.
the funds
Is it-
to do that.
Is
We-
it
we-
something that could come from I know I keep talking about the over, the increased parking meter money or the increased short-term rental money that was gonna go to
Correct.
workforce housing that is obviously not going to happen, so.
Yes.
Can those funds be appropriated, so it is
Yeah.
something that is covered by the people that park and or come and stay short-term
And
rentals?
the question is, for you all, on the blue sheet, it's, what's the alternative is not having them. So,
Well, let's start there. Is everybody in agreement that they wanna have the New Year's Eve fireworks?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not here, but it's essential. I partake the ones in Maui, but
So that, I think there's
So we'll go
people
from
wanna
there.
have them.
you're welcome.
Now, how do we pay for them?
Couch
So
potatoes.
I'll get with
Put Joe to
Joe.
work.
We should have funds available should we need that. There's some other options we can.
And does
I'll
it
get with
make-
him and make a recommendation.
Does it make sense to attach this special events budget to those buckets going into the future? So
yeah,
it
and the
allows
only
you-
reason it's 35 or what, 30, it's 30 to 40,000, I have to look, I think it's around 35, is cause that, when we shut them off from the pier, they were only about 12 to 15 minutes.
I think these
So-
special events are crucial to
Yeah.
the recovery of the
I
island.
do too, and we've had good luck with, and I'm not asking for donations at this point, but we've had good luck with donations as well in the past. But we'll find a way to pay for ours unless somebody really wants to.
And we're talking about today, we're talking about 4th of July, or we're talking about
New Year's.
New
New
Yep.
Year's.
And we have enough time with everything. It's the same company we used last year, which I thought were great fireworks. We're gonna shorten it up a little bit, so it's more booms all the time. Maybe we shorten it up by like 2 or 3 minutes. You'll get a better show that way. And then the barge company's the same as we used for the last ones. They were great to work with, so the permitting isn't gonna be as hard with the Coast Guard because they already have everything going. So.
I just want to say the 4th of July was spectacular. You did a great job of that.
I think it's a good idea to shorten it a little bit, so there's more consistent action.
Some people say longer is better. Some people like the compacted version, so we're gonna go a little bit shorter with the same amount of firepower.
But we are willing to be open to take donations, correct?
If someone
Yeah.
wants to, sure.
Yeah, if someone
So
wants to.
just
Absolutely.
contact
Yes,
you,
sure.
or,
Yeah, you can contact me, for sure.
thank you.
Put your email address out there, or should they just go to the Yellow Pages?
Yellow Pages, please. They should be delivered at your front door in no time soon. J Hauge, so JHAUGE at FMBGOV.com. JHAUGE FMBGOV.com.
Got it? Okay, well, I think you have direction. Joe's he's got nothing else to do, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, really, right?
We all don't. This is all we're focusing
He's
on.
got weekends.
All right,
does he?
Poor guy.
next is the
anymore.
downtown lights. I'm assuming that's you again, Jeff, or?
Well, yeah, it had been brought up as we move into the holiday season about groups or nonprofits, I believe decorating our.
You want me to run with it? 'Cause I think I'm the one
Go.
that brought it up.
That's true. I wasn't gonna throw you in front of that bus,
Yeah.
but.
So
He's throwing everybody else under the bus, so.
Yeah, no, was it right after Ian, we went up to Dunedin, which is a small town, like a Hallmark movie town, and one thing we noticed was all the light poles in the area were decorated with snowmen and had their own little light shows, and it was very unique, each pole, and it was people taking pictures with it, and I thought it was a really cool idea that would be something we could do here. Nonprofits, whether Lovers Key, Women's Club, even a private resident, if they want to sponsor a pole and decorate it and do what they want.
That sounded good.
I can think of one.
Anyway,
Whole day.
so,
I knew you were going there. I knew you were
but
gonna go there.
the question is, are we gonna be able to get power to these poles before then? Because if there's no power, it's kind of a.
We
Possibly, we,
You know, because it's interesting.
Okay.
Someone always comments to me about that bike that sits out in front of the ice cream shop on Fifth,
Yes.
right off the.
Right.
And no, everybody's like, it's kind of cool. I mean, it's always got different decorations
That's
on
why
it.
we
it's
don't move
always
it.
They
there.
just updated it to fall decorations.
Yeah,
I
so
just
it's-
saw
it's-
that.
It is
kinda
kinda
neat.
cool, actually. It's-
So to be able to do all the poles all the way down, I think it adds much needed light, assuming we can get
Yeah, so we're
electricity.
working on how the funding goes. We do have 3 quotes, to replace the lights.
And the electrical.
And the electrical, everything at Bayside as well. Everything that's, I'll just tell you the current status of Bayside, maybe real quick if you get.
Sure, go with it.
So it's gotten flooded every time. The panels we've had to replace twice. There was a electrical fire down there, so we had to shut off the power to everything. We thought we fixed it. We turned the power back on. For the last storm, Andy and I were down there, and Nicole, I believe, were down there, and we thought one of the lights was on fire again, so we shut it off. So it needs to be completely redone. For public safety, we don't just need to try to Band-Aid when we find things. It needs to be redone.
Right.
The wiring is so we're not going to put ground lights in. We're going to have a new system for that still has uplighting on the trees. Our plan is to redo all the wiring, pull up all the pavers, redo the conduit that we need because there's messed up conduit there, and going down north of down Old San Carlos, because we know that public safety, we do need lights down there for sure. These solar lights work okay, but they're not the greatest. We just needed to get it done. So we do have a quote to redo all of that, and they are ready to work. So that's where we're at. So hopefully, I don't know how long the process will take once we figure out the funding and how to do it, but they are ready to go. The company that gave us the lowest bid is ready to go and ready to work. So
Is there a time frame on how long it would take start to
I
finish?
don't know. This was just development in the past week. So
It falls under emergency, and we've talked to Tidal Basin, we've talked to FEMA, it's reimbursable, and so we're gonna get going and then bring it to you for approval, because we talked to Joe, it qualifies as emergency purchase because of public safety, and so we're gonna move as quick as we can to get
And
that
because
going.
Christmas is coming.
Correct.
and yes, that's Christmas.
Does this proposal include adding an elevated outlet that can be used for lighting, or no? On each pole?
Yes.
We will buy the poles that can be conducive to that, yes.
Well, actually, we're putting where the outlets are. We're gonna move the outlets there, and move them up
Yeah.
the pole a little bit, so they're 6, 7, 8 feet up.
Those are at Bayside.
Yeah, Bayside.
At Bayside.
And we
I'm
can-
talking all down
we
the
can-
San
On the
Carlos.
light poles, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll wire
We do
those
street
in.
lights the same
Yeah.
way.
They're just,
The ones, yeah, because the ones
Otherwise,
at
what we're
Times
talking
Square
about
had
here
just a
is
little
useless.
outlet next
Correct.
to it. But I think they can be built in to do that. So they're
We
gonna be
can-
running it.
The
anyway.
poles we can buy can have electrical outlets up high.
Yeah.
And just to keep in mind, this is not the funding that we receive for the CDBGR. That program will kick off probably within about another 6 to 8 months by the time all the paperwork gets done. There's a considerable amount of paperwork and road work that has to be done. Once that's done, then you will have your final design on how all that lighting, additional lighting, will look going down from Bayside Veterans all the way to Times Square. Because we did get in excess of $300,000 for that portion. But they're two separate things. So this is an immediate fix and to go with. The other one will be a long-term solution to alleviate a lot of these problems, whether it's the 2 junction boxes that we have, permanent repair to that, and waterproofing those so we don't run into this problem time and time again. Other solutions that we are still in the engineering phase on.
well, let's make sure we're not duplicating things here. FPL is replacing, in their quote, FPL was to do the lighting, repair the light and the posts on San Carlos Boulevard.
Were they? Was
Yes.
that for sure?
Yes.
Okay. Because I've heard it both ways. I haven't actually seen it.
Oh, look at the contract.
Yeah.
Yep.
They'll be just standard poles unless we want decorative poles, but that is now they aren't gonna be doing the electric to the poles, that's on us. But part of their scope of work is to do a steerable, or that as well. So I just wanna make sure we're not putting up something they're gonna come through or have them amend their contract if we're gonna do it.
That's a way we could do it
Whatever,
too. This has been long enough, with these lights and not having lights and public safety, people walking around, tripping hazards with stuff.
Well, hopefully
so
they can get the electric fixed quickly.
Yeah, they can also, FPL can also supply the poles. I mean, we just have to get with them about, because they do that as well. They've got the resource for downtown lighting, decorative type poles and things like that.
Well, and if we can get the electric fixed, then maybe we can push FPL to jump down there and get that done.
Yeah, because there's more to it. The lights that are in there aren't even have J bolts. They're just rebarred into the concrete. So we got to cut all that out, each one. Put the pad down, put J bolts down. So when they did it originally, whenever that was, it's just rebar coming right up. There's no bolts, so we got to cut all that out.
It's kind of a miracle that as many stayed as they did,
Yes.
considering all the debris that was pushed back at the end of Ian that we saw pictures of.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it goes without saying, but the faster you get that done, the better it would be.
That's our goal.
that's
Yep.
the goal.
This came into focus late yesterday afternoon, so
Nice.
we're moving.
Got it. All right, agenda management. John, anything?
No.
Vice Mayor?
No.
I don't have anything right now.
You got it.
Council Woodson?
Our meeting, our joint meeting, I know that's not necessarily agenda management, but our joint meeting with LPA.
Amy, next Tuesday Wednesday or Thursday, you said? You got,
We have, LPA meets on Tuesday
right.
now, and it's gonna be a fairly long meeting, I believe. With Murph being moved to December, we have Wednesday open, and we have Thursday afternoon open, because the audit committee will be in here in the morning on Thursday.
I've got a conflict Thursday afternoon, so, but Wednesday morning would work fine. John, you said you had a conflict Wednesday afternoon, right?
Yeah, I have to be in Cape Coral at 1:30 on the 13th.
Could we do it bright and early Wednesday morning?
Now, how long would it, how long do you guys think it'd take if we started?
It's the only agenda, it's the only agenda
It's
item,
one
right?
thing, so we just started at 8:30 and
Well,
8:30?
folks like
Pizza
oh,
day.
8 o'clock, 7 o'clock.
Is that what we're doing?
No.
8:30, is that what we
That's
want?
early, we're here.
If we got, well, we don't know if the LPA members will be able to make that either, but tentatively, we'll say
November 13th?
at 8:30.
Have we heard, do we?
Yep.
That's for us. We don't know what the LPA,
Well,
their
we'll just-
calendars look like.
I'll
Send
send
it
them
out,
an
just to
email and
confirm,
ask.
just kinda-
Yep.
So for right now, put it down for November 13th at 8:30,
8:30.
right? Okay.
That work for you, Scott?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. All right. Jim, you said you're good, right?
Yes, because Nancy had mentioned she wanted to hopefully get it before the next,
Yeah,
the
before the
18th.
18th,
So that
because
helps.
you would be using your procedures.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. Anything for you, Scott? Oh, I guess Karen, are you finished?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good for right now.
Okay. With that,
I would just say that it's been a thoroughly productive Nancy Day, and I hope you all continue to celebrate. I know I will be raising a glass later to you, Nancy, so with that, I'll move to approve,
Thank you.
to adjourn.
Thank you.
all right. I'll second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.